Chapter 763. Good. That's not a problem. Li Chenglong nodded. He could hear that Gao Chaoer didn't have the slightest intention of mocking him this time. She wasn't even considering him. She was really doing something. It was impossible for 400 nascent soul students to enter this relic without a unified command and clear orders. If they fought separately, they would only be defeated by the enemy one by one and all of them would die. Gao Chaoer had extraordinary schemes and means, but she didn't have the ability to convince the masses. At this time, the ability to convince the masses was the most important part. It was the prerequisite for everything. Even if you had heaven-defying wisdom and peerless wisdom, if everyone didn't listen to you, you would be blind and unable to do anything. But this problem could be solved perfectly by Zhuoxiao Duo. Even without Zhuoxiao Duo, Li Chenglong could solve it perfectly. Everyone was in the nascent soul realm. You're not convinced, right? Come out. I'll beat you until you're convinced. You're not convinced, right? Come out. I'll beat you until you're convinced. Force might not be the most effective means, but in special circumstances, it was the fastest and most immediate means. Okay. Li Chenglong agreed. Gao Chaoer said, when the time comes, Zhuo only needs to appear and control the situation. Zhuoxiao Duo was in high spirits. Do you need me to make a move to intimidate them? Hearing this, Gao Chaoer couldn't help but be embarrassed by this guy. She was speechless for a long time. Ever since the battle between you and Bing Xiaobing in the arena, the whole school was directly convinced by you now. Do you still need to make a move? This guy clearly wanted to show off his prowess. Ahem. You guys go back first. I still have to report some things to Zhuo. Gao Chaoer secretly rolled her eyes and drove the others away. This is the progress of the material processing. Gao Chaoer took out a piece of paper from the space ring. Give me what I should. The process isn't important. Zhuoxiao Duo waved his hand and said generously. He looked like a big boss who didn't need to look at it. I'm not worried about the Gao clan. Gao Chaoer rolled her eyes again. You've sent such a wretched guy who values money as much as his life to supervise by the side. Of course you're worried. By the way, how's your cooperation with Mr. Fong going? Are you happy with each other? Zhuoxiao Duo asked. Director Fong is indeed a talent. Although she didn't have a good impression of that wretched guy, Gao Chaoer didn't deny Fong Yinua's ability to do things. He was indeed very strong. Mr. Fong is managing the company on his own now, so there's no problem. The business under his jurisdiction has also expanded to a certain extent. Although his methods are slightly harsh, the results are excellent. In particular, President Fong is a smooth and slick person who is always smiling. He also gets along well with the people of the Gao family, so there are few grudges between us. Gao Chaoer sighed faintly. How could they not be harmonious? Not only was that guy slick, but he was also very good at dealing with people. Every day, he would bring his uncles out to look for female martial artists. However, the source of this matter was the uncles who wanted to corrupt President Fong. However, they never expected that President Fong had already corrupted himself to such an extent that after doing this a few times, Director Fong actually became very successful in this industry. He even turned around and introduced his uncles to people they liked. This result in operation was really too embarrassing. What was even more embarrassing was that all the food, drinks, entertainment and all the expenses were all paid by President Fong himself. He didn't use a single cent of the company's money and took advantage of them at all. They didn't know where this guy got the money. In short, he was so extravagant that it was scary that his other abilities still needed time to be considered. However, his ability to use money and his inhumane nature were daunting and admirable. Gao Chaoer even suspected that President Fong was a part-time general manager during the day and a masked thief at night. Naturally, Gao Chaoer didn't know that her suspicions were the truth. With regards to Zhuoxiao's money, Fong Yinua didn't dare to embezzle even a single cent. However, Manager Fong had plenty of ways to earn money. For example, he would stroll around the treasure vaults of the various large clans and companies at night, strolling around at the most ridiculous time. Someone had just bought a treasure from him and he stole it back that night. A few days later, he openly put it up for auction again. When others asked, President Fong said with conviction, I really couldn't tell that it was that item. That day, a manager suddenly came up to collect it. If you really lost it, this matter. The company is too big, and we also feel a little uncomfortable. Why don't you buy it back at half price? In the face of such an honest explanation, the thief's family was helpless. Once you've paid for the item, it's yours. If you didn't take good care of it and it was stolen, the auction house would buy it back from the thief. No matter how strange the process was, you couldn't just take it for free, right? The whole company was thriving because of Feng Yinhua, and it had a lot of money. However, it also had a foul atmosphere. It was unbearable to look at it directly. It had almost completely turned into a man's paradise. Gao Chao simply let it go. President Feng, you are so capable, you can do it yourself. Anyway, the Gao family has shares in the company. Anyway, the Gao family will be the ones doing the work. However, they didn't know that this was Feng Yinua's ultimate goal. That night, he called Swishaoduo to tell him the good news. Boss, I've succeeded in seizing the power of the class. You can rest assured. Now our company is full of security. Swishaoduo didn't know what to say. He just let it be and let it be. After receiving 15,000 high-quality jade of astral souls, Swishaoduo and Li Chenglong returned to the first class and stayed for a few minutes before going home. They quickly went home to cultivate and break through. It seems that the high-quality jade of astral souls in Fenghai is really out of stock. Swishaoduo sighed faintly. The resources that he had given Gao Chao were worth at least a few 100,000 high-grade star soul jades, not to mention a lot. Moreover, Feng Yinhua and Gao Chao had been so busy. After such a long time, they only managed to collect so few high-quality jade of astral souls. Although they still had tens of billions of star origin coins, what was the use of having so many star origin coins now? When they had too much money, it would not only be a number, but it would also depreciate. They would not be able to buy it anymore. Li Chenglong was called over by Wen Xingtian. He didn't know what to do. Swishaoduo went home first and stored the space-destroying pagoda, in order to absorb the heat from the heart of the ardent sun in the pagoda. As Swishaoduo continued to absorb the heat emitted by the heart of the ardent sun was much less than before. It seemed that it wouldn't be long before he could get his hands on it to cultivate. Swishaoduo was quite obedient this time. Although he entered the space-destroying pagoda, he didn't disturb Zhuxiaonian, who was cultivating. After he came out, he immediately called Feng Yinhua and told her to continue preparing the Star Beast storage and recharge the Dragon Blood Flying Dagger. Although the Dragon Blood Flying Dagger's auxiliary effect continued to decrease, it was still a considerable help. It could at least be maintained until he broke through to the nascent soul transformation stage or even the cloud transformation stage. After informing Feng Yinhua, he made a trip to Boss Sun's place, intending to take away the Star Soul Jade powder he had received during this period of time. Then, holding on to the slightest bit of hope, he made another trip outside the city, to the place where the white-robed lady had dumped the Star Soul Jade powder. Maybe there was more? When he went over to take a look, Swishaoduo was really shocked. He was just hoping that there would be more. But in the end it was more than that. There were simply too many. Not only was the underground space completely filled, but a small mountain had also been piled up on the surface. However, a lot of it had been scattered in all directions by the meteorites, and a lot of it had been wasted. After all, the Astral Soul's jade powder that was mixed with impurities could not be used. As stingy as Swishaoduo was, he could not help but feel heartache. Damned meteorite. Sigh. Hurry up and start packing. The harvest this time was almost twice as much as the previous time, and there was still a surplus. It could be said that they were returning from a rewarding journey. If a worker wants to do his job well, he must first sharpen his tools. Since he was going to start his closed-door cultivation, he had to collect as many of these things as possible. Swishaoduo would never give up anything that he deserved. Only when he got his hands on it would it belong to him. It didn't matter if it was useful or not. If it was useless, at most President Feng would sell it again in the Void Extermination Tower. Xiaolong was working hard to move the items. He was also grinning from ear to ear. So it was really too awesome now. The amount of Astral Soul's jade powder that he had collected during this period of time had shocked me. I could not control myself. No, I have to go out tonight to move another half of my meridian and poor Xiaolong. Sigh, when wolves will come in. I want to eat Zwadidi. Sob. When Swishaoduo returned home, Zhuqianglu and Wu Yuding were lying on the deck chairs on the terrace, rocking back and forth, looking very comfortable. Swishaoduo's eyes were full of envy as he looked at them. My parents are so happy and carefree. This is the life I have always dreamed of. However, the most important thing now was to quickly break through to the nascent soul stage. Everything else could be left for later. Time was too tight. After a few words with his parents, Duo plunged into the Void Extermination Tower and worked hard to cultivate. The resource reserves were basically in place. After 5 days in the Void Extermination Tower, Duo and Xiaonian, who had been in seclusion for half a month, came out for dinner. Mom and Dad were leaving. We will go back tomorrow. Wu Yuding's eyes were full of reluctance to part with her son and daughter. She gazed at them for a long time. When they went back this time, it might be a few years before they could meet again. Also, they might not be able to meet face to face. After all, they had to prepare for their return this time. Okay. Duo ate in big mouthfuls just like when they were at home. His mother's cooking was really delicious. This time we will probably have to go back. Both of you have to be well. Wu Yuding stroked the hair of her son and daughter with both hands and smiled. Both of you must be healthy and stable. Chapter 764. Duo was stunned when he heard this. He raised his head with a big steamed bun in his mouth and asked, "So soon?" "Yes, we feel that we have an opportunity to recover." Zhuanglu smiled faintly and said, "The family will only be on tenterhooks if we delay any further. So we might as well do it earlier. The earlier we recover, the earlier we can return. Wouldn't that be better?" Xiaonian still felt uneasy. Her eyes were full of worry, and the spoon in her bowl slid unconsciously. She said uneasily, "Dad, Mom, you really didn't lie to us, right?" Wu Yuding chuckled and said, "How about this? If we don't call or video call you in 3 months after we go back, you can stab yourself with a knife and get even with us. Why are you so paranoid?" Duo panicked and said, "Miss Cat, you can be paranoid, but you can't be so paranoid. Why do you even suspect Dad and Mom?" Xiaonian blushed and said, "Mom, look at what you're saying. How can I not believe you? Don't listen to nonsense." "Humph." Wu Yuding rolled her eyes and said, "Have you ever trusted us in this matter?" Xiaonian smiled embarrassedly. Duo also smiled embarrassedly. Both of them were on tenterhooks, worried that their parents wouldn't come back. They were just leaving them as a memento. That would be too sad. Over the past few days, Duo had to read his parents' fortune a few times a day. In the end, he decided to use all 10 drops of Providence points together. However, no matter how he looked at them, they were still healthy and had a smooth life. That was all there was to an auspicious life. For this reason, he even deducted Xiaolong's rations. "Dad, Mom, how high are your cultivations?" Duo could not help but feel scared. "You don't have any cultivation now, but why can't I see your faces?" Zhuanglu coughed and said with a frown, "No matter how miraculous your physiognomy is, it still depends on a person's physiognomy. We are not sitting here in person, so it would be strange if you could tell." Duo felt more and more conflicted. Obviously, his fortune was the same as Xiaonian's. He was still afraid that his parents would lie to him. In fact, the truth was that he did not have long to live. You two can think whatever you want. Time will prove the truth. Wu Yuding and Zhuanglu were speechless at this point. They had clearly warned him in advance, so why was he still being so wishy-washy? Who did he take after? Neither of them had such a problem. Duo and Xiaonian looked at each other, indicating that they would talk in private later. Duo said with a drooling face, "Dad, Mom, did you see the sky inspecting minister token today?" "We saw it." "Why?" Zhuanglu and Wu Yuding looked at each other. "Why are you asking?" Duo said excitedly, "Dad, Mom, the sky inspecting minister's surname is also Zhua." "Oh, so what?" Zhuanglu was puzzled. What was this kid trying to say? Duo lowered his voice and said sneakily, "Dad, Mom, the people with the surname Zhua are not as rare as phoenix feathers and unicorn horns, but they are still quite rare, right? You say, think about it. Could our Zhua family have the bloodline of the heaven inspecting minister after many generations?" Wu Yuding spat out a mouthful of tea and coughed incessantly. Zhuanglu was shocked by this sentence. His eyes almost popped out of their sockets. He held the mouthful of tea in his mouth but could not spit it out or swallow it. Wheeze. It was the tea in his mouth. Anyway, the more I think about it, the more I think it's possible. Dad, Mom, your son is not a person who seeks fame and fortune, but at least with a good background, this life will be a lot easier. Zhou Xiaoduo winked mysteriously. Dad, Mom, if it's true. How happy would that be? Our family could really be the great-grandson of the sky inspecting minister's great-grandson. For a moment, Zhou Xiaoduo's imagination was running wild. Maybe it's the direct bloodline? Dad, the issue of your background is worth paying attention to. Zhou Chonglu was speechless. Nonsense. He swallowed that mouthful of tea with great difficulty. I'm not joking. It's really possible, Dad. Zhou Xiaoduo said anxiously. It's really possible that the sky-inspecting minister left behind an erotic love story in Phoenix City. Then there was our family. After many years there was you and then you had me. Cough, cough, cough. Cough, cough. Wu Yuding coughed until she was almost out of breath. She patted her chest and took a deep breath, but she still could not hold it in. Ha 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 ha. Zhou Chonglu's face was dark. How can the sky-inspecting minister be such a despicable person? Don't talk nonsense. Zhou Chonglu's palm stretched and retracted. He had the urge to hit someone. Zhou Xiaoduo disagreed. Dad, don't be intimidated by the reputation of those big shots. Which one of these big shots is not lustful? Look at those TV dramas. They're all lustful. Maybe this sky-inspecting minister is an old hooligan in his bones. Who knows how rotten his private life is? Who can say for sure? At such an old age, how many women have he had? Maybe he can't even remember. Shut up. You shut up for me. Zhou Chonglu said fiercely. How can you talk about the great heroic leader behind his back like that? Cough, cough, cough. Wu Yuding choked again. She rolled her eyes and said, You don't say. Maybe Doggy is right. Maybe the Sky Patrol minister is really a womanizer. Maybe he has blossomed in Phoenix City and left behind his bloodline. Is it really impossible? Besides, he's so old. It's normal for him to have a lot of women, right? What do you say, Dad? What do I say? What do I say? Zhou Chonglu could not hold it in anymore. He suddenly stood up. We're leaving tomorrow. Let's look at the stars in Fenghai City tonight. His face was red as dates. He hurried upstairs and occupied a recliner. He left in a somewhat sorry state. Mom, is there really no hope? Zhou Xiaoduo looked at Wu Yuding and said anxiously, This is the bloodline. This is a great opportunity to reach the heavens in one step. This is a great opportunity to be a salted fish. My lifelong wish. To be a salted fish. My biggest regret is that I am not the second generation. Sai, I really don't know if your dad has the bloodline of the sky-inspecting minister, but it's hard to say. After all, they are both surnamed Swa. Wu Yuding rolled her eyes and said, When I go back this time, I will look through our family's genealogy. Mom, then you must look through it carefully. Zhou Xiaoduo said attentively, Don't miss any important clues. Even the slightest clue is good. Wu Yuding rolled her eyes and left her seat without saying a word. As she walked, she laughed non-stop. Originally, he had been filled with sorrow of parting, but this brat had made it all disappear, and he had almost burst his belly from laughing. But this kid guessed right. There was no mistake at all. Didn't the sky-inspecting minister bear fruit in Phoenix City and leave behind his bloodline? How could this be fake? It couldn't be any more real. He was definitely the direct descendant, the only seedling in 30 million miles. Zhou Xiaoduo cleaned up the dishes while Zhou Xiaonian went to the kitchen to wash the dishes. When Zhou Xiaoduo finished cleaning up the table, he walked quickly to the kitchen and hugged her slender waist naturally. He said, Nian Nian Mao. Call me sister. Okay, Sister Nian Mao. Sister Nian Mao, about Dad and Mom. Zhou Xiaoduo hugged her slender waist and began to talk about business. He took advantage of her and talked about business without delay. Zhou Xiaonian also became serious when she heard this. She said as she washed the dishes, Although I don't think it's fake, I'm still afraid. Me too. Zhou Xiaoduo sighed. Do you think Dad and Mom will go overboard? I don't think so. Zhou Xiaonian frowned. It's a pity that we're too weak and can't help at all. It's fine as long as it's not fake. It'll take about 3 months. After that, everything will be clear. Zhou Xiaoduo's heart calmed down. His intuition told him that this was definitely true, but as a son, he couldn't help but worry about gains and losses. He was afraid that something unexpected would happen. And Zhou Xiaonian had the same thoughts as him. This was definitely true. But his heart was in a mess. It was always hanging in the air, and he couldn't calm down. Sister Nian Mao. Sigh. Zhou Xiaonian sighed and turned to look at him helplessly. You'd better be called Nian Mao. The words Nian Nian sister cat sounded weird no matter how he heard it. If others heard it, they might misunderstand. Okay Nian Mao. Zhou Xiaoduo revealed a wretched smile behind Zhou Xiaonian. It seems that from now on, Nian Mao will be my exclusive name. It won't be restricted anymore. Haha, Nian Mao was indeed dumb. She didn't even correct him to call her little Nian Mao. Seems that my hypnosis is good. It's like a fish in water. It's so easy. Nian Mao kept switching between Nian Mao and Nian Mao, making her subconsciously think that she could only choose one of the two names. Naturally, she chose Nian Mao, which she was most used to. Wahahaha. I'm indeed brilliant, talented, and full of wisdom. Who can compare with me when I have such extraordinary wisdom? Who else? When it comes to wooing Nian Mao, I Zhou Xiaoduo call myself the best in the world. Who doesn't agree? Even if they don't agree, they're not allowed to compete. Those who compete will be beaten to death. It's better to be wrong than wrong. Why did you call me? Zhou Xiaonian finished washing the dishes and wiped her hands. Only then did she realize that this guy was holding her waist in a daze. It was obvious that he still had something to say. Tonight, I might have to use the 9th heaven spirit spring. Zhou Xiaoduo said. I just don't know how much my cultivation realm will drop after using it. It doesn't matter. Zhou Xiaonian said, no matter how much it drops, it's a good thing. The spiritual energy will be more refined and pure. It'll only be good for the future. Mo, right. When I came out for dinner, I received a notice that the 9 Heavens Pavilion needs to send 30 cloud transformation cultivators to enter the secret realm. I'm on the list. Zhou Xiaonian said, what about you? I'm the leader of the 400 soul transformation cultivators in the secret realm. Zhou Xiaoduo said proudly. Chapter 765. You're only at the primordial elixir level now, okay? How can you be a nascent soul captain? Zhou Xiaonian mocked him. I'm going to be a nascent soul captain soon. Why can't I be one? Nian Nian cat, when you were at the embryonic breathing stage I was nothing. When you were at the soul awakening stage I was at the Xiantian level. When you were at the nascent soul stage I was at the embryonic breathing stage. Now you're at the pinnacle of the cloud transformation stage, and I'm at the pinnacle of the primordial elixir realm. I can break through to the nascent soul stage at any time. Zhou Xiaoduo was very satisfied and said, I feel that I'm getting closer and closer to you. I believe that soon you'll be singing Conquer in front of me and doing the cat ear dance for me. Why don't I find a video for you to watch first? You don't have to cram for it at the last minute. Zhou Xiaonian's forehead was filled with black lines. Earlier, when she heard him talk about the past, she was still gratified by his progress. In the end, he suddenly took a turn and almost hurt her. Turned out that it was all a trick. He had been scheming against her step by step. This was simply intolerable. Even if the uncle could tolerate it, the aunt could not tolerate it. Get lost. Zhou Xiaoduo didn't get lost. Instead, he carried Zhou Xiaonian to the sofa. Then he took out his phone and started to look for videos. Look at this young lady. She's dancing well. Look at her cat ears, look at her butt. Look. Zhou Xiaoduo suddenly felt that something was wrong. When he looked up, he saw Zhou Xiaonian's frosty face. Hey dog. Are these all your followers? Zhou Xiaonian grabbed the phone and opened My Followers. She saw that there were at least 100 female streamers. They were all good at dancing and were more flirtatious. She clicked on a few to take a look. Her face was pale and cold, and a chill was coming out of her. Zhou Xiaoduo knew that something was wrong. For a moment, he didn't even dare to hug her waist. He curled up at the side and explained dryly in a low voice, I'm also for the sake of. In the future we'll have more fun as husband and wife, so that we can make plans early. For you. Zhou Xiaonian almost crushed her phone. These steel pipes. Electric buttocks. Wow, you're really obscene. Before he could finish his sentence, he tossed his phone onto the sofa. Sui Xiaonian stood up with a cold face and stomped back to his room. He was angry. Oh no. Sui Xiaoduo looked dejected and disheartened. Sui Xiaonian went back to her room and sat down angrily for a while. A cold light flashed in her eyes. Humph, puppy. You disappoint me too much. This was simply despicable. After pondering for a long time, he finally took out his phone, opened up a video streaming website, searched for a few videos based on his memory, and began watching them. But the more she read, the redder her face became. She hurriedly followed a few of them and decided to criticize them when she had time in the future. She didn't have the time for that now. He hurriedly put away his phone and put it into his spatial ring. She looked at herself in the mirror. Her face was still as red as a ripe apple. She didn't go out for now and looked at herself in the mirror. She said angrily, "Those women. There's no need to talk about their color. They can't compare to me. Humph, even their figures are far inferior to mine. When I have time, I'll play with them casually. I'll definitely charm this puppy." Who asked him to wander around and look around? He really deserves a beating. If Wu Yuding were to hear this argument, she would definitely sigh and lament, "Girl, what kind of mentality is this? You're not thinking in the right way. If you do this, won't that little puppy be the only one to benefit? Sigh, girl, you're really hopeless." After a full hour, Sui Xiaonian came out of her room with a cold face. Sui Xiaoduo looked at her with a pitiful face, waiting for the punishment to come. Practice martial arts. Sui Xiaonian's face was cold. Okay. Sui Xiaoduo hurriedly opened the Tower of Annihilation and humbly said, Nian, cat? Let's go in." His flattering face, coupled with his handsome face, was extremely out of place. The magic of creation was evident. Sui Xiaonian snorted coldly and took the lead to enter with her head held high. Sui Xiaoduo was relieved. It seemed that her temper had passed. She didn't get angry when I called Nian just now. She escaped a disaster. One who survives a great disaster is bound to have good fortune in the future. Haha. Wait for me. Sui Xiaoduo called out from behind and eagerly followed her in. Prince Zhongyuan's mansion. Prince Zhongyuan was wearing a royal robe and feeding the fish in the back garden. At this moment, Prince Zhongyuan's mansion looked cold and cheerless, without any signs of life. The princess consort had already been executed, and all the guards in the family had been captured. All the leaders of the secret organizations had already gone to hell to report. Most of the female martial artists who were secretly searching for concubines had been beheaded. The rest had been forcibly dismissed. In short, no one was left in the mansion. In the entire Prince Zhongyuan's mansion, other than a few maids and a few guards, only the butler and servants were left. The prince's mansion of the Central Plains, which had once flourished for a period of time, was now left with only a few people. Dressed in a bright yellow robe, Prince Zhongyuan stood by the pond with one hand behind his back. The three-clawed golden dragon on his body reflected in the water, swaying back and forth as if it was about to devour someone. The butler served him from a distance with his back hunched. Looking at Prince Zhongyuan's figure, he felt bleak, no longer as composed as before. The butler didn't know whether it was an illusion or reality. "Your Highness," the butler said softly. "Where is the heir now?" Prince Zhongyuan threw out a handful of pearls and asked calmly. "He's still on his way back from Shangjing." The butler said, "Your Highness, do you want me to pick him up?" There was a sad look in the butler's eyes. He knew about all the Prince Zhongyuan's heirs, including his illegitimate children. But what the butler also knew was that, except for the heir who was officially registered as an emperor, the other bloodlines were all gone. There were all sorts of ways to die, and there were all sorts of strange ways to die. They drowned, burned, fell, got caught in the wind, drank too much, got scalded by hot pot. Their cell phones exploded, and the building they lived in suddenly collapsed. In short, there were only ways to die that one couldn't think of. The wide range of deaths was breathtaking and marvelous. The 100 to 200 descendants of His Highness had all gathered together in the underworld. Hundreds of the prince's women were also meeting in the underworld. Other than that, the prince's 10,000 old subordinates, 3,000 secret assassins, 8 gangs, and 12 aristocratic families, all kinds of forces and layers of foundation were waiting in the underworld now. The prince only had 2 secret masters left in his hands that he didn't know about. These 2 people were probably the only ones who hadn't been caught. There's no need to pick them up. Prince Zhongyuan said lightly, "Those who deserve to die will die. Those who don't deserve to die will definitely live." He waved his hand. "Old Ma, come here. There's only the 2 of us in this mansion." "Yes, Your Highness." The butler walked over obediently and stood next to Prince Zhongyuan with his back hunched. At this moment, the fish in the pond suddenly started rolling violently. A fish was spitting out blue bubbles with all its might. In the entire pool, all the fish that came into contact with these blue bubbles began to roll around crazily. Then they also began to spit out bubbles continuously. The same blue bubbles in the blink of an eye. Hundreds of big fish in the entire pond started rolling. Regardless of species, big or small, all of them were spitting bubbles. As the water with bubbles flowed past, the other fish ponds connected to it also started rolling and spitting bubbles. It was like a chain reaction. Usually, a prince's mansion had several gardens. But when one reached a certain status, there would be a layout of 5 lakes and 4 seas. In other words, there were 9 fish ponds, which symbolized the imperial family's wealth. And the Prince Zhongyuan's family had such a layout. But now all the fish in the 9 ponds were rolling and spitting out blue bubbles. Some of the fish with weaker vitality had already started to show their white bellies. "Your Highness, this is..." The butler, Old Ma, looked at the fish pond in front of him in shock. What are you doing?" Looking at the big fish rolling in the pond with his hands behind his back, the Prince Zhongyuan sighed softly. He said dispassionately, "Old Ma, how many years have you been with me?" Old Ma was confused. He said, "Since I entered the mansion, I've been serving you, Your Highness. Until this year, it's been a total of 121 years. It's been more than 120 years, more than 60 years. Old Ma, you're a participant in all my plans and also the executor of all my deployments. Old Ma, you're my most trusted aide." The Prince Zhongyuan sighed softly. "Old Ma, look at the fish in the pond. They're divided into 9 places and seem to be connected. But their range of movement is still limited to the Prince Zhongyuan's mansion. Everyone is connected, breathing the same air, drinking the same water. They're of the same origin." "Yes." Old Ma was puzzled. What did this mean? The wind and rain outside never affected them. To them, the perilous situation outside was nothing more than a legend. They were originally safe. The Prince Zhongyuan said slowly, "This was originally very good. This was originally excellent. But look at the situation now. Originally, only 1 fish was poisoned, but as this fish began to spit out bubbles crazily, the poison spread. Because this 1 fish was poisoned, it implicated all the fish in the 9 ponds. All of them suffered misfortune, and none of them were spared." The Prince Zhongyuan stood with his hands behind his back. His gaze was cold and calm as he looked at the fish in the pond. "This is my mansion, but I can only watch them die one by one. There's nothing I can do. But at the end of the day, the root of the disaster is because of this 1 fish? Old Ma, don't you think so?" The Prince Zhongyuan turned around slowly and looked at the butler, Old Ma. Old Ma looked perplexed. He said, "If Your Highness says so, then it must be so. So, regardless of whether it's a group, the most terrifying thing is not the raging storms outside. It's the internal ones. The disaster caused by 1 poisonous fish is enough to bring disaster to the entire pond." The Prince Zhongyuan smiled faintly. His gaze gradually became as sharp as a blade as he stared at Old Ma's face. Requesting monthly votes. Please provide support. Chapter 766. Old Ma was dumbfounded. "Your Highness, you mean the King of Zhongyuan?" slowly said. "Old Ma, do you know that the Prince of Zhongyuan's residence has been deployed for so many years, spent so much effort in planning, and paid a huge amount of wealth that even an ordinary aristocratic family would not dare to imagine? Everyone was so careful, from beginning to end, to contact each other. Finally, when the net was about to be formed, they were all caught in one fell swoop. For the person in charge, how hard is it to accept?" The King of Zhongyuan took a deep breath. "Don't you think our residence is like this pool of fish?" The housekeeper's gaze also turned sharp. "Your Highness, you mean there is a traitor among us?" The King of Zhongyuan nodded lightly, a hint of mockery in his eyes. Yes, a traitor. A traitor who has an overview of the overall situation and understands everything. The king of Zhongyuan's sharp eyes fixed on the housekeeper Old Ma's face, like two red-hot needles pricking his face. Staring at him like this, he slowly said, "Years of planning to defeat the West Wind. The golden carp is still unable to become a dragon. Conceded that he has the world's plan. His subordinates are all heroes. In dreams, in the field, above the clouds, under the clouds, suffering. Weaving a net of the world, hiding 3 suns in the depths of the palace. Waving his sleeves to raise the military and political will. Planning to bring the Zhongyuan into his pocket. Everything is ready, waiting for the right time, but all is in vain. What is the end of this life? Who in the world can answer his doubts?" The housekeeper Old Ma suddenly looked excited, exclaiming in admiration, "Your Highness, good poem. Your Highness, good poem." The king of Zhongyuan closed his eyes slightly, gently exhaling. "I'm asking you a question. Why did you give me a good poem?" Things had already come to this point. Could it be that they still couldn't be honest with each other? This traitor is that poisonous fish. This traitor is constantly spitting out bubbles, implicating all those who have come into contact with him. They are all implicated in the calamity of death, and it is difficult for them to escape. A slight smile appeared on the king of Zhongyuan's dignified face, but the smile lines on his face were cold and callous. The housekeeper's face was full of anger, gnashing his teeth. "Your Highness, who is that person? Who is so crazy? Do you know?" "I know. Of course I know. If I still didn't know until now, wouldn't I be extremely foolish?" The king of Zhongyuan looked at the butler's face. His eyes became increasingly cold, but there was also a hint of sadness and emptiness in them. The steward said with righteous indignation, "Please give the order, Your Highness. Even if I have to risk my life, I will not let this person go. This person has committed a heinous crime and deserves to be killed." The king of Zhongyuan said quietly, "Old Ma, do you really think so?" "Yes. This subordinate is so angry that his belly is about to explode." The king of Zhongyuan chuckled. "Then why don't I tell you? That person is you." "Yes." The butler stood rooted to the ground, his mouth agape as he stared blankly at the prince of Zhongyuan. The king of Zhongyuan was very close to the butler. He looked at the butler with an oppressive gaze. Gritting his teeth, he smiled and said in a low voice, "Yes, it's you, Your Highness." The butler took a step back in panic and almost fell into the pool. "Your Highness, I'm innocent. I'll be loyal to you for life." A self-mocking expression appeared on the king of Zhongyuan's face. Her. Loyal to you for life. Her, ha ha ha. He suddenly burst into laughter. He laughed so hard that he rocked back and forth and tears came out of his eyes. Tears of laughter flowed down his cheeks, but he was still laughing. Ha 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 ha. I'm dying of laughter. Ha ha ha. This is too funny. This is too funny. The king of Zhongyuan laughed maniacally, not caring about his manners at all. "Old Ma, since you're so loyal to me, please tell me honestly. Can I still see my son? Can I still see the crown prince and his family? See them for the last time?" The king of Zhongyuan bit his lip so hard that it bled. The butler panicked. "Your Highness, what's wrong? I just received news that the crown prince's carriage is about to enter Fenghai. You'll be able to see them soon." "I'll be able to see them soon. Ha ha. I've already seen them." The king of Zhongyuan laughed bitterly. His entire body was trembling. He took out his phone from his bosom. There were dozens of pictures in it. The butler's gaze was fixed on the name of the caller. "In Yang guest. Take a look, take a good look, my loyal butler." The king of Zhongyuan did not care about what the butler was looking at. Now he no longer cared about anything. He was still laughing maniacally. "Take a look. Take a look. I've seen it. You take a look too." The butler trembled incessantly. "Your Highness, Your Highness. I'll show you." "Yes." The butler picked up the phone and flipped through the pictures one by one. The pictures were all of corpses. There were men, women, and young children. There were even a few pictures of families who had died neatly together. The king of Zhongyuan looked at the weeping willow in the mansion. Its bare branches were swaying in the breeze. Occasionally there would be a soft sound, and a branch would break off and fall. It would fall into the dust. The Crown Prince and his family were found dead on the road at Xiaomeng Mountain Pass this afternoon. Everyone, including the accompanying guards, men, women, old and young, were all killed, including my grandsons and granddaughters. The king of Zhongyuan took a deep breath. The Crown Prince kept a few mistresses in Shangjing. The king of Zhongyuan's eyes were bloodshot. Very soon you won't faint anymore. That's right. Once a person is dead, how can he still faint? The butler puffed on his cigarette. The smoke curled up and almost covered his face. Who are you? The king of Zhongyuan held back his temper that was about to explode and asked through gritted teeth. You're from the royal family? The crown prince? Or the Nine Heavens Pavilion? Or the left and right heavenly kings? Or the minister and the emperor? When he mentioned the last two people, the king of Zhongyuan's voice also trembled. The butler, old Ma, laughed mockingly. He bit the cigarette butt and took a puff. You really think highly of yourself. Do you think you're worthy of the minister and the emperor to specially deploy people to deal with you? The butler laughed mockingly. Suddenly, he coughed violently, tilted his head, and spat with a disgusted expression. Tui. He actually pointed at the king of Zhongyuan with the hand holding the cigarette and scolded with infinite disdain. Can you have some self-awareness? Who the hell do you think you are? Do you think you're worthy of so many big shots scheming against you? Can you be more shameless? You've already lost your family, and you're still acting like an idiot. Where does your confidence come from? Chapter 767. You're scolding me. The king of Zhongyuan was suddenly stunned for a long while. The butler suddenly spoke to him in such a tone, and he was actually at a loss for what to do. Even though he knew that the butler was a traitor and a mole, he was already used to the butler's subservience and groveling after so many years. Now he looked at this person whom he had been with for more than 100 years, whom he was more familiar with than his wife, whom he trusted 100 times more than his wife. He was stunned on the spot when the butler said such vicious and mocking words to him, and he did not come back to his senses for a long time. Then who exactly do you work for? The king of Zhongyuan's mind raced, but he was not angry. He was only left with curiosity now. Who was the one who schemed against him and planned for 100 years? For so many years, the butler had been loyal and devoted to him. He had completed all the tasks given to him perfectly. That was something he had seen with his own eyes. But until now, the king of the Central Plains still could not figure out why he would betray him. I'm a bastard. The butler sneered. As he spoke, he suddenly slapped himself. This slap was extremely heavy, directly knocking out 3 of his own teeth. When he looked up again, his mouth was already dripping with blood. He looked at the king of Zhongyuan's face and suddenly sneered. You want to know? You really want to know? Please enlighten me. I'm not anyone's man. And no one instigated me. The butler slurped and swallowed the blood and teeth back into his mouth. I'm about to leave, so it's better to be in one piece. Take them with you. Not anyone's man? The king of Zhongyuan was even more confused. How is that possible? Do you have a grudge against me? I have no grudge against you. The king of Zhongyuan was completely dumbfounded. No one instigated you and you have no grudge against me? Are you crazy? Why are you doing this to me? If I have to say it, I'm your man, the butler said with certainty. My man. The king of Zhongyuan felt insulted. He glared and was about to fly into a rage. I'm indeed your man, and I've always been your man. The butler took a deep breath and said in a deep voice. Back then, when I was fighting at the front lines, the flood which struck me with her hammer and knocked me unconscious. My primordial spirit was injured and my origin was damaged. I fell to the ground and fell on the spiked club with a bad face. Not to mention my face, even my facial bones were gone. I retired from the army with Yi Chongqing and the others. But we are not the same kind of people. My way of doing things has always been based on achieving my goal. I don't care about the process, so naturally, I'm much more sinister and vicious. However, the few of them boast of being open and above board, and refuse to use underhanded tricks. Therefore, we really don't have much interaction usually. They went to the Hidden Dragon High School, but I don't want to teach and I don't want to wander the Jianghu. But I don't want to live an indifferent life and become an ordinary person. I still want to do something in another place and in another place. I've never been the kind of person with a strong sense of justice. At the same time, I don't want to be buried. I'm already used to stirring up trouble and controlling the overall situation. Even my brothers in the army fought each other because of my instigation. Some of them fought until they became lifelong enemies. In their eyes, I'm a poisonous snake. Not only are they difficult to be friends with, they're even unbearable to be associated with. You definitely don't know that Yi Chongqing and the others were also once instigated by me. They almost killed me because of this. But no matter how unbearable it is to be associated with them, when we're on the battlefield, we'll still leave our backs to each other and save each other's lives no less than a dozen times. I don't want to meet them, and I don't want to face that battlefield again. My left and right faces are already ruined, so I might as well reconstruct a new face. I'll use a new face and a new name to start a new life. Stirring up wind and rain is already the greatest pleasure of my life. Old Ma chuckled and said, "You're an ambitious person. Following you will not only not bring disgrace to me, but will also allow me to unleash my talents. I've really put in the greatest effort to follow you in the rebellion. I also really want to meet the wind and clouds once. Even if I die, I'll have no regrets. I don't care about right or wrong. I don't care about justice or evil. I only want to live a happy life. I only want to live a happy life for the rest of my life." Old Ma said, "When I entered the Prince of Zhongyuan's residence, I did everything you asked me to do properly. I became your confidant bit by bit, and even participated in some important matters later on. I've been loyal to you for decades. It's all because I've done my best for you. I've treated myself as your dog. It's because this feeling of stirring up trouble in the dark is too satisfying. So I'll do whatever you want me to do. I'll bite whoever you want me to bite." The Prince of Zhongyuan nodded. Old Ma's words were not wrong at all. During those years, Old Ma's loyalty to him was to the extreme. It was really to the point that it made one's hair stand on end. The Prince of Zhongyuan didn't know how many shady things he had done for him. In fact, it was also at that time that the Prince of Zhongyuan found out that this guy was a jack of all trades. He could do anything and dared to do anything. In the end, he completed everything extremely well. How could such a talent not be entrusted with heavy responsibilities and treated as a confidant? After more than 100 years of interaction, the two of them could be said to have an excellent tacit understanding. Just from the perspective of companionship and trust, it wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that they were best friends in the world. That was why the Prince of Zhongyuan found out so late that the mole was actually Old Ma. The Prince of Zhongyuan even thought that even if his wife betrayed him, Old Ma wouldn't betray him. Even if he changed his mind and betrayed his own people, Old Ma wouldn't betray him. But now it just had to be this absolutely impossible person. I used to think that I'd never betray you in my life, until I suddenly found out that you've actually laid your hands on a martial artist. A martial artist? The Prince of Zhongyuan was stunned. That's right. Old Ma's face was blood red. It doesn't matter who you've laid your hands on. Even if you've laid your hands on the minister and the emperor, even if I know that I'm no match for them, I'll still help you plan. At most, I'll die with you. It doesn't matter. But why did you lay your hands on Shi Yunfeng? Why did you lay your hands on Yi Chongqing? You instigated people to plot against Yi Chongqing first. But as long as he's not dead, I won't do anything even if I feel uncomfortable for a while. You instigated people to frame Xiang Quangren, that's still fine. As long as he's not dead, you can hide at home for a while. I'll even be happy to see that happen. After that, you set up a trap and pulled in the major families of the capital. For your hegemony, you made Yi Chongqing and the others sacrifice their status. I can still accept it. As long as he's not dead, everything else is insignificant. However, I never expected that you would lay your hands on Shi Yunfeng and Cheng Gaing so viciously and ruthlessly. Fine, since you've done it once, I'll do it 15 times. What I'm more concerned about is when did you fall in love with Yu Jiren? Old Ma asked fiercely. Until now, there's still a portrait of Yu Jiren hanging in your study. Do you still remember the day of Shi Yunfeng's wedding after he returned to the Hidden Dragon Kingdom and found a wife? I didn't do anything. I just hid in my room and drank myself to death. Surely you have some impression of that, right? Ever since I came to the Prince of Zhongyuan's residence, I've only gotten drunk once in all these years. Old Ma asked fiercely. The Prince of Zhongyuan was in a trance. He vaguely remembered that there was a time when he asked the butler to do something, only to be told that the butler was so drunk that he didn't even know who he was. He kept shouting that he was a marshal and wanted to lead the troops into battle at that time. The Prince of Zhongyuan found it funny that this viper-like guy had such a naive side. He didn't expect it to be because of this. His brother got married and he got drunk happily. There's nothing wrong with you liking Yu Jiren, but why didn't you pursue her before she got married? Old Ma asked fiercely. Even if you wanted to snatch her before she got married, as long as you said so, even if you wanted me to snatch her for you personally, it would be fine. What's the big deal about snatching and playing with a woman? You could have said so earlier, why didn't you? You've played with so many women, why did you start to pretend to be pure when it came to Yu Jiren? Fuck you. Do you think you're a Casanova? You're a fucking stallion. Even stallions don't have as many maras as you do. The Prince of Zhongyuan snorted and said angrily, Yu Jiren usually dressed like a country bumpkin. How could I have noticed it? The only time I saw her real face was on the day of her wedding with Shi Yunfeng. I was there as a guest. And then you fell in love at first sight? Aren't you fucking cheap? Old Ma was obviously going all out this time. He knew that he wouldn't be able to survive today no matter what. It was better for him to curse out everything in his heart before he died. Venting everything in his heart. Anyway, the Prince of Zhongyuan didn't know everything yet. He had plenty of time to curse and curse as viciously as he could. That was what it meant to be satisfied and to the fullest. So all these were done by you and Yi Chongqing from the Hidden Dragon High School? The Prince of Zhongyuan was trembling all over. Just the two of you? How awesome do you think you are? Just the two of us? Old Ma snorted and said proudly, there's no we, only me. Only me, do you understand? They don't know at all. Old Ma spat. Those few idiots, they're so simple-minded and don't even have a brain. If I were to work with them, I'm afraid I would have been caught by you long ago. He roared proudly, I did it all by myself. Why, isn't your father awesome? The Prince of Zhongyuan started to tremble all over. He really wanted to slap this person to death, but there were too many doubts in his heart. The arrangement of the Hidden Dragon High School was already part of my plan. Besides, I didn't ask you to do those things. Do you have to do this? The Prince of Zhongyuan said angrily. Of course. You harmed my brother, of course I have to take revenge. Chapter 768. By the time I found out about Shi Yunfeng, you had already done it. Shi Yunfeng had already secretly gone to the front line. Since then you wanted to lay your hands on Beauty Yu, but you never succeeded. Do you know why? The King of Zhongyuan snorted coldly. With my butler helping over there, I naturally couldn't succeed. You are the only one who can understand all of my arrangements. You are the only one who can use most of my power. You are also the only one who can erase all traces after the event without me noticing. Ha ha ha. Beauty Yu is already my brother's wife. What do you think you are? It's one thing for me to be your dog, but in my heart you Jun Taifeng have never been a human. I can be your dog, but you can't lay your hands on my brother's wife. My brother is dead, and I can't save him. I've already let him down. If I let you defile his wife, then what's the use of me? Old Ma twisted his neck. Originally, Shi Yunfeng wanted to die. After I protected Beauty Yu, I wanted to leave. Because if I continued to work for you, I'd let Shi Yunfeng down. But you killed Cheng Gaing's 2 granddaughters, and you even used such a despicable method. The blood on Old Ma's face was flashing as he gritted his teeth. For the past 100 years, no matter what bad things you do, you're used to discussing it with me first. Why didn't you discuss it with me only that time? Is it because it's related to the royal family's secret, and you don't want me to know? The King of Zhongyuan was in a daze. At that time he didn't deliberately hide it from Old Ma. It was because Old Ma was sent out to do something. He forgot. Besides, targeting those 2 girls was indeed related to the royal family's secret. It was a rare opportunity, and it was fleeting, so he arranged it conveniently. Just these few people. You'll never contact these few people in your life. Are they worth betraying me? The king of Zhongyuan was confused. I don't have a father, a mother, a wife, or children. I don't even have brothers or sisters. Old Ma howled to the sky. The 17 of them who survived that year, are the only warmth in my heart. The only warmth in my heart. You know, son of a bitch. Do you know why I chose the king's mansion of Zhongyuan? It's because the hidden dragon is in Fenghai. And your king's mansion of Zhongyuan is also in Fenghai. Because they are all here. With them here, as long as they are still alive, I won't be lonely. In this life, I don't even care about my own life. I don't know how many evil and heartless things I've done. But what's funny is, I care about these brothers who crawled out from the pile of corpses with me. I don't want to see them, not because I look down on them and not because I feel inferior. I don't feel inferior when I do bad things because I like to do bad things. I don't feel inferior or proud. It's just that they are annoying. Fuck, this is so annoying. Old Ma grabbed his hair and said crazily, the moment we met, they talked about all sorts of things and persuaded me to do things with them, to turn over a new leaf. Fuck. If I really wanted to do it, would I need their advice? Is it so fun to go to a martial arts school and teach a bunch of idiots who don't know shit every day? Looking at those ignorant and naive idiots who always think that society is fair. I want to strangle them to death one by one. You still want to teach? Teach. I'd rather change my face and identity to be a dog than do that kind of thing. There was a time when I read the Hidden Dragon Daily and the Hidden Dragon High Martial Arts School website every day. What do you think I was doing? You must have thought that I was deliberately looking for the flaws of the people from the Hidden Dragon High Martial Arts School. In fact, I missed them and looked at those messages to comfort myself. Old Ma seemed to be crying and laughing at the same time. The king of Zhongyuan suddenly understood. I see, I really thought that you knew that I wanted to deal with the Hidden Dragon High Martial Arts School, and thought of ways for me every day. When Yi Chongqing got into trouble, I tolerated it. When Xiang Quangren got into trouble, I also tolerated it. After all, they were still alive. But when Shi Yunfeng died, I couldn't tolerate it anymore. But since you and I have known each other for 100 years, although I was determined to deal with you, I would only target you and not your family. But not long after Chang Gaing's incident happened, I made up my mind. How can I leave before I completely destroy you? They can't take revenge, but I can. Old Ma laughed miserably. At that time, I swore that I would make your Zhongyuan imperial residence extinct. Kill them all. Exterminate them all. I will make your Zhongyuan imperial residence, and not a single blade of grass in your imperial residence survive. I will let you have a good taste of your family being exterminated and your family being exterminated. I will avenge my brother. Old Ma roared to the sky, tears of blood flowing down his face. He laughed loudly. Shi Yunfeng. Brother. Do you see that? You fucking beat me every day in the army, but now I am avenging you. Are you satisfied? Are you satisfied? Are you fucking satisfied? Fucking Shi Yunfeng. Fucking Shi Yunfeng. I saved your life 7 times, but you still scolded me every day like a son of a bitch. You fucking died and I am the one who avenged you. Are you satisfied? Those who hurt you have been uprooted by me. Ha ha ha. Their entire family, old and young, will be exterminated. Old Ma roared with laughter, looking extremely crazy. Ha ha ha. I am not with you every day, but I have not forgotten. I am a bastard, I do not do good things. I follow good people to do good things and bad people to do bad things. But I do not want to follow good people, there are too many restrictions. I can't do anything in the army, but I want to live happily at home. Whether it is doing bad things or avenging you, I want to do it happily. It is the best. Old Ma roared with laughter, as if he had completely lost his mind. The king of Zhongyuan, on the other hand, had completely calmed down. I see, so this is the truth. Back then, when Chang Gaing broke into the imperial residence, I personally went to greet him, but he still managed to escape. You must have done something, right? The king of Zhongyuan finally understood. Many of his doubts in the past had been answered. At that time he had decided to attack, intending to kill Chang Gaing directly. However, Chang Gaing had still managed to escape after taking a fatal blow from him. It was extremely strange. That was his imperial residence, his own territory. A seriously injured outsider who was not familiar with the terrain at all, who was facing so many experts, had actually managed to escape. And he could not even be caught after escaping. It turned out that he had a steward as a spy. Old Ma sneered. I have been your steward for more than 100 years. It was very easy for me to lead him out without anyone knowing. How could I watch my brother die here? After that, you even wanted to investigate the spy. Ha ha ha, with your little brain, how could you find out? I see. I see. At this moment, the king of Zhongyuan only felt a sense of absurdity filling his entire head. There was no more hatred or anger, or rather no more hatred or anger. It was not as great as this absurd feeling. I have worked so hard for half my life, all my efforts, all my planning. All because of this bullshit brotherhood. And I have fallen just like that. Who can I find to reason with? I really did not expect this even in my dreams. Over the past 100 years, he had worked together with the man before him to get rid of the spies planted by the royal family, the Bureau of Supervision, and the military. They had gotten rid of all of the spies planted by the royal family, the Bureau of Supervision, and the military. If it were not for the fact that most of it was done by the steward, how could I have trusted him so much and entrusted most of my power to him? But who would have thought that the most loyal dog in my heart, who never doubted me, was actually the biggest traitor? And the reason he betrayed me was because of this so-called brotherhood that I would not believe in at all. If old Ma had not revealed it himself today, if others had used this as a basis to expose me, I would have scoffed and not believed them. I would even send the people who exposed old Ma to old Ma directly and tell him a joke. These people said that you betrayed me for your brotherhood. Ha, this is fucking unbelievable. How could there be such brotherhood in this world? How could there be such feelings? This is fucking ridiculous. But why are you still here? You have already caused me to lose my descendants, my bloodline to be extinct, and my career to be ruined. Why are you still here? Asked the king of Zhongyuan. This was the biggest doubt in his heart. Before today, even though he had his doubts, the steward had countless opportunities to leave if he wanted to. But he did not leave and stayed here all this time. Until now, when he could no longer bear it and dragged him out. Leave? Old Ma smiled viciously. You are not dead yet, how can I leave? I will not leave before I have my revenge. It will only be over when you die after your whole family is dead. Jun Taifeng, why can't you bear with it? If you bear with it for a few more days, I will make my move on you. You still have two confidants that I have not found and killed. Why can't you wait? The king of Zhongyuan sighed softly. So you are still waiting for me to die. You actually want me to bear with it for a while more. Opposite him, old Ma chuckled, his face full of joy. I served in the East Army, and then, when Shi Yunfeng finally exposed himself, I felt that this was an opportunity, an excellent opportunity, so I reported all your actions to General Dongfang. From the beginning to the end, I did not miss any detail, ha ha ha. All this information is with me. Even you do not know as much as I do. Old Ma laughed heartily. That is why Chief Nan is purging this time. Now do you understand? You did it for this? To betray me? Just for this so-called brotherhood? The king of Zhongyuan was trembling all over. Never in his wildest dreams would he have thought that his life's work would be ruined because of this. Even until now, he was still unwilling to believe this person. Brotherly love. Brotherly love. What the hell is that? This bastard did so much for this. Is this not enough? Old Ma laughed sinisterly. What you did to my brother, I will make you become like him. I will repay you tenfold. That year, I went out on a mission with Shi Yunfeng and the rest. When I came back, my butt was hit with the secret sorcery king needle, and the wound smelled like the sewer of a chemical factory. The 6 of them carried me on their backs and sucked my butt with their mouths. I'm alive now, but they've all been bedridden for half a year. Every part of their bodies is as swollen as dough. When Shi Yunfeng sucked my blood for the last time, his face was already bigger than my butt. When Xingtian's mouth was injured, and one of his teeth was knocked out, in order to suck my butt, half of his face was scraped off after he came back, and 2 layers of his bones were scraped off before he survived. We went through fire and water together. They saved my life and I saved their lives too. No one owes anyone anything. However, for the brothers who sucked my butt like this, whoever killed them, I will avenge them no matter what. I don't have to acknowledge anyone in this lifetime. Only they can't. I don't have to avenge anyone in this lifetime, but they can't. I don't have to care about anyone in this lifetime, even myself, but they can't. You fucking. For a moment, the king of Zhongyuan was even speechless. Suddenly, he was so exasperated that he started cursing, you fucking. You're just a fucking rotten maggot with ulcers on your head and pus flowing out of your feet. Why the fuck are you talking about brotherhood in the martial world? You bastard, do you think you're fit to talk about loyalty? Are you worthy? The king of the Zhongyuan was speechless. He suppressed all his emotions. These words were also from the bottom of his heart. He really thought so. How can someone like you be fit to talk about brotherhood? Was he worthy of having feelings? This was like a prostitute who had been a prostitute for half her life coming home to find her husband, only to ask him to have money, a building, betrothal gifts, and a car. She even asked him to be a virgin. This was really fucking motherfucking. Why am I not worthy? Why wasn't he worthy? It's not up to you to decide if I'm worthy or not. Old Ma lit a cigarette and looked up. I've been blinded by lard. I've been bad all my life, but I still have brothers and people I can't let go of. Even I find it strange. But I've already talked about brotherhood. What can you do about it? The king of the Zhongyuan looked at this face. He had never realized that this face was actually so annoying. Old Ma's face was contorted with a cigarette in his mouth. He revealed a vicious smile and said, actually, you should be happy, because you still have a few daughters. Nominally they're dead. But in reality, they're not dead yet. The king of the Zhongyuan's thoughts turned and his face became even more contorted. What do you mean? It's nothing. They're in some place now, doing something that makes a man the happiest. The freckles on Old Ma's face were almost protruding out. He smiled sinisterly and said, actually, you shouldn't be surprised. This is the interest I collected for Chang Gaing's 2 granddaughters. I don't have any children or family. My brother's granddaughters are my granddaughters. This is the interest I collected for my granddaughters. Are you satisfied, Your Highness? It's the 3rd watch today, please vote. Let me know who defeated me, and I will send you on your way. Old Ma looked at him suspiciously and said, do you mean what you say? This king is the king of Zhongyuan. King of Zhongyuan? What are you? Old Ma spat out a mouthful of pus and blood in disdain. He said disdainfully, the title king of the Central Plains doesn't even have a credit limit to me. The king of Zhongyuan was furious. Seems like you are just stubborn. You don't dare to tell me your name? Old Ma laughed. I'm so scared of you. Why wouldn't I dare? Why would I be scared of a loner like you? He laughed wildly and said, I am the Eastern Army Snake Gentleman. I am Hua Qianshou. Hua Qianshou. Snake Gentleman Hua Qianshou. The king of Zhongyuan nodded fiercely. Good Hua Qianshou. Good Hua Qianshou. The more he thought about it, the angrier he felt. His many years of planning had been ruined in the hands of such a person he had long recognized as one of his own, a person he trusted, a person he was close to. Moreover, it was for such a baffling reason that he found hard to believe and even more incomprehensible that after thinking about it, he could not help but spit out a mouthful of blood. Who did it? The king of Zhongyuan asked fiercely. If it was just Hua Qianshou alone, he could not have done so many things. He could not do it even if he was tired to death. Besides, he did not have the time. Who's the one who did it? Your question is so naive and stupid. Hua Qianshou laughed wildly. You think you can get the answer? Ha ha. Stupid. The king of Zhongyuan looked up to the sky and roared. Hua Qianshou. Your brothers don't even know what you have done, do they? Hua Qianshou laughed strangely. Why, you want to make a name for me? You want to tell them that I have done so many things for them in secret? Then I will thank you. Ha ha. I was worried that I could not let them know that I have done so much for them. Ha ha. As you wish. The king of Zhongyuan let out a thunderous roar. As you wish. Suddenly he grabbed Hua Qianshou and flew away. Now that the king of Zhongyuan had lost his last bit of consolation, he had gone completely crazy. Years of hard work had been ruined. All his subordinates were destroyed. All his forces were gone. All his children were gone. All his women were gone. Everything was gone. Everything was gone. The king of Zhongyun carried Hua Qianshou, who had been beaten to a pulp, and flew into the sky. Hua Qianshou had been tortured by him until he was like a pile of mud, but he was still conscious. He was still cursing and muttering. His vicious cursing did not stop all the way. And he was still laughing. Good. Good. I am so awesome. I am so awesome. Ha ha ha. He was still feeling proud that he had managed to bring the renowned king of the Central Plains to such a state. What an incredible achievement this was. How dare you kill my brother? How dare you hurt my brother? Damn it. I want to see how many people in this world dare to hurt my brother after I am gone. Ha ha ha. Hua Qianshou laughed wildly. He knew that he was about to die, but the joy in his heart was sweet and refreshing. He was still extremely happy. This is what it means to repay kindness and revenge. This is what it means to repay kindness and revenge. I am so awesome. I am so awesome. Hua Qianshou laughed and cursed all the way. But the king of Zhongyuan ignored him. The king of Zhongyuan's spiritual world had collapsed at this moment. The cold wind blew on the king of Zhongyuan's face. His body was shaking. Tears flowed from the corners of his eyes and were blown away by the wind. Gone. Everything was gone. His beautiful wife and concubines, his plan of having 100 children, his wealth and glory, his ambition, his power and his ability to command hundreds of people. His child, from a small meatball, grew up bit by bit learning how to speak. All the way. Today all of them were destroyed. No one survived. They had all turned into piles of rotten flesh. On the snowy ground, the crown prince's eyes, which were still open, were looking at his wife's naked body. Not far away was his grandson, whose brain had been smashed. The king of Zhongyuan howled in pain. He did not even know what he was screaming for. He only felt that his heart was constantly exploding and hurting. I had already stopped. I was already disheartened. I had already accepted my fate. I only wanted to live the rest of my life in peace. The 4 great commanders had already agreed to let me live on and protect my family for the rest of my life. The left and right heavenly kings had already let me go and stopped pursuing the matter. Even Yi Chongqing and the rest could only look for opportunities in secret. They might not even have a chance. I will not give them a chance. Whenever they came, they would die. I have already accepted my fate. But you, Hua Qianshou, did not let me go. What does it have to do with you? What does it have to do with you? At this moment, the king of Zhongyuan only felt that he had already broken down. Even in his dreams, he did not expect that when he had already accepted his fate, such a person would jump out. Hua Qianshou, you have done so many things to avenge your brothers. You are so cruel, so vicious. Tonight, I will let you see with your own eyes how your brothers will die in my hands. You have done so many things. You are so cruel and vicious. Tonight, I will let you see with your own eyes how your brothers will die in my hands. One by one they will die in my hands. I want you to see with your own eyes how your brothers will be tortured to death one by one in front of you. I will kill all your brothers. Then I will directly kill that shit stirs Wuxia duo who suddenly appeared. Then, I will rush into the Hidden Dragon High School and start a massacre. I will let your group of geniuses be buried with me. This prince's life is already ruined. Then let millions of people experience this kind of pain that makes them wish they were dead. Your Highness. 2 figures flew over and landed in front of the king of Zhongyuan. They were his only 2 subordinates. It could be said that they were the only ones left. Get out of the way. Your Highness. Think thrice. Think thrice. One of them urged anxiously. Think thrice. Chapter 770. The king of Zhongyuan howled and laughed bitterly. In youngest netherworld, how can I calm down? How can I think twice? My entire family was destroyed by this son of a bitch. They're all dead. They're all dead. Now I have nothing. Now I have nothing. I really have nothing left. The king of Zhongyuan howled. If I don't take revenge, how can I, Jun Taifeng, continue to breathe? Your Highness. No need to persuade me. I'm going to kill tonight. If you want to come with me, then we'll kill until the world is turned upside down. If you don't, I won't blame you. From now on we'll go our separate ways. The king of Zhongyuan stood in the air, carrying Hua Qianshou with a sorrowful expression. Farewell, both of you. Then he carried Hua Qianshou and flew toward the direction of Hidden Dragon High School. Behind him the two looked at each other. At the same time they stopped in the air. Yin Yang guessed, what do you say? The eyes of the Netherworld assassin behind the mask were like Willow the Wisps. Netherworld assassin, what do you plan to do? Yin Yang guest's voice was indifferent. It's just a mortal world. The king of the Central Plains has done me a great favor. Since he has decided to turn the world upside down tonight to get rid of his hindrance, I'll sacrifice my life to give him the last bit of prestige. No matter what, he's still a king. Even if he's at the end of his rope, he should still have some dignity. The Netherworld assassin, who had never taken off his mask in his entire life, slowly pulled off his mask, revealing a chiseled face. What about you? The Netherworld assassin looked at Yin Yang guest with bright eyes. My situation is different from yours. I can watch from the sidelines, but at most I can't help either side, Yin Yang guest said indifferently. Watch from the sidelines? Help neither side? The Netherworld assassin was furious. Yin Yang guest, I didn't expect you. Yin Yang guest said indifferently. I'm a subordinate of the King of the Right. I only successfully entered the King of Zhongyuan's group 3 years ago, but I've never been trusted. Helping neither side is the limit. And the reason I don't want to help the King of the Right is because I'm afraid of causing criticism, not because of any other reason. After all, the king has already let the King of Zhongyuan go. The Netherworld assassin was instantly at a loss for words. He actually didn't know what to say. I'm from the Heavenly King of the Right. This sentence was really straightforward to the extreme. This reason was too sufficient and indisputable. Yuming, you should actually leave. Let me give you a piece of advice. Don't get involved in this mess. Yin Yang guest said faintly, Jun Taifeng? What kind of prestige does he have? Is such a person worthy of your life and death? Where else can I go? The specter assassin stood with his sword in hand. For a moment he was at a loss. He originally wanted to die with the King of Zhongyuan, but when he heard him say that he was under the King of the Right's command, his heart shattered. Let's go to the Sun Moon Pass. Yin Yang guest said sincerely, life is but a lifetime. If you can sacrifice your life for Jun Taifeng, why can't you sacrifice your life for the astral souls? With your cultivation it won't be difficult for you to clear your name. I can report this to the Heavenly King and give you a chance. The Netherworld assassin only felt that at this moment, he was all alone in the world. For a moment, he was actually distracted. Okay. The Netherworld assassin finally sighed deeply. I'll go and take a look at Jun Taifeng's ending. Yin Yang guest said, I've just reported this matter to the Heavenly King. If there are no accidents, tonight should be the King of Zhongyuan's last song. Ba Jun Taifeng really doesn't deserve last song. It's my fault for using the wrong words. The Netherworld assassin hesitated for a moment. His voice was a bit dry as he said, Can I go with you? Of course. But I want to warn you, don't act rashly. Even if it's just a thought, it's the difference between life and death. I don't have the ability to save you. I understand. 2 figures riding on the wind, chased in the direction where the King of Zhongyuan went. The King of Zhongyuan carried Hua Qianshou and had already drifted far away. However, his movement speed was getting slower and slower. He was waiting to see if the last 2 subordinates would catch up. Even if one of them caught up, the King of Zhongyuan would feel that he wouldn't be too miserable in this life. Even if he were to die, there would still be people following him. However, after waiting for a long time, there was still only the whistling cold wind behind him. It was quiet. Not even one person followed him. None of them came. At this moment, the King of Zhongyuan's heart was as cold as ice. Suddenly, he felt that this world was really lifeless. Ha 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 ha. Hua Qianshou suddenly burst into laughter. He laughed until tears and snot flowed down his face. You're waiting for them? Do you want one last consolation book? Ha ha ha. You actually think they'll come? Die with you? Go to hell together? I'm dying of laughter. I'm dying of laughter. You? Ha ha. Ha ha, you're dreaming. You're a fucking stray now. Take a piss and look at yourself. Ha ha. You actually want loyal subordinates now? Just you? Trash like you? Ha ha. In your dreams. Shut up. Shut your mouth. The king of Zhongyuan only felt that the volcano in his heart had completely erupted. It exploded. No one came. Why didn't anyone come? Even the last subordinates of the two of you have left. The king of Zhongyuan carried Hua Qianshou and turned into a flash of light, passing through space and rushing toward the Hidden Dragon High School. His bright yellow robe flashed across the night sky. The three-clawed golden dragon robe fluttered in the air, baring its fangs and brandishing its claws. From this moment on, the king of Zhongyuan did not look back anymore. He pushed his speed to the maximum. That at the Hidden Dragon High School villa area. It was already 11 p.m. at night. Suochonglu and Wu Yuding got up from the balcony and prepared to go down to rest. However, at this moment they suddenly frowned at the same time and looked into the distance. Obviously, they noticed that someone was flying toward them from the other side like a madman, full of murderous intent. That monstrous aura of hatred could be clearly felt even from afar. The king of Zhongyuan. Suochonglu frowned. Is this guy crazy? Wu Yuding sighed softly. It's a pity. The king of 100 battles still can't keep his bloodline. Suochonglu sighed softly. Let the royal family adopt one. In the neighboring villa, Yi Chongqing was reading in the study when he suddenly felt uneasy. A monstrous aura was already pressing down on him. Yi Chongqing did not dare to be negligent. He reacted immediately. His aura suddenly erupted and he shouted, "Who is it?" He was about to fly out. With a boom, the person had already landed in the courtyard in front of the villa. With a thunderous roar he shouted, "Yi Chongqing, come out." Yi Chongqing's figure flashed and appeared at the door. The king of Zhongyuan? Yi Chongqing looked at the king of Zhongyuan, who was already like a madman in confusion. He frowned and asked, "Your Highness, why have you come in the middle of the night?" Well, what was he holding in his hand? With a whoosh, the king of Zhongyuan threw the bloody body in his hand toward Yi Chongqing. Yi Chongqing dodged instinctively. The body immediately fell to the ground in front of him. Although the body was covered in wounds and was severely injured, he was still breathing. He turned over with difficulty and lay face up on the ground. His face, which was covered in blood, was still laughing happily. This person was severely injured. There was no hope for him. With Yi Chongqing's rich experience, he could tell at a glance that this person was no different from a dead person. All the meridians in his body were broken. His internal organs were also destroyed and almost turned into powder. He was only relying on the last breath of a high-level martial artist to hang on to his last breath of life. Once this last breath of life dissipated, he would die and his Tao would vanish. Such an injury was destined to be incurable. In this situation with such injuries, even if a deity came to save him, even if the 7 sword emperors of the 12 great shamans Tao League were present at the same time, they could only watch him die slowly. At most, a martial artist's original soul would not be destroyed, and there would be a chance for him to be reincarnated. This is Housekeeper Ma? Yi Chongqing carefully identified the man and exclaimed in surprise. Based on his understanding of the king of Zhongyuan's influence, Steward Ma was an unparalleled loyal old dog to the king of Zhongyuan. Many despicable things were done by this fellow for the king of Zhongyuan. It was precisely because of this that Yi Chongqing increasingly did not understand the king of Zhongyuan's purpose in doing this. Butler Ma. The king of Zhongyuan laughed crazily. You only recognize Butler Ma? Ha ha ha. This is your good brother Yi Chongqing. You don't recognize him? Ha ha ha. You don't recognize him? Hua Qianshou panted with difficulty. He opened his eyes and looked at the king of Zhongyuan. He cursed with all his strength. Jun Taifeng, fuck you, fuck you, fuck you. Ha ha. I'm so happy. Ha ha. Yi Chongqing was shocked. Not only had he seen the king of Zhongyuan's butler many times, but he had also interacted with him many times. This was a scheming, sinister ghost domain man. He sucked the cigarette between his lips and spat out smoke. Good. Boss. When Xingtian and the others looked at Yi Chongqing and the steward of the Wang residence of the Central Plains, they were puzzled. This is Qianshou. Yi Chongqing carefully treated the wounds on Hua Qianshou's body, especially the bloodstains on his face. He said sadly, Hua Qianshou. Qianshou. Hearing this name, the four people were all shocked. The steward of the Wang residence of the Central Plains was actually him. Even Grandma Shi was surprised. She didn't know Hua Qianshou, but she had heard Shi Yunfeng talk about him more than once. Every time he talked about him, Shi Yunfeng would gnash his teeth and scold him. However, the pain and resentment in his heart couldn't be concealed. He had left a deep impression on her and was hard to forget. Cheng Gang was suddenly enlightened. So he is Qianshou. So that's how it is. When I barged into the imperial residence, I was severely injured in an instant. Initially, I thought that I would not be able to survive. However, after fighting with the butler, I was able to fight my way out of the imperial residence. So this is the truth. Hua Qianshou looked at Cheng Guing with the cigarette in his mouth and laughed strangely. If it wasn't for me, your bones would be rotten by now. Cheng Guing, I would have returned the favor of sucking my ass a long time ago. It's a pity that you didn't know and understand until today. You idiot. Qianshou. Cheng Guiying's eyes were red. How did you become like this? Hua Qianshou laughed strangely and was extremely proud. Back then, each and every one of you. You were so condescending and arrogant to me. Bah. Wasn't it just sucking my ass? Fuck. Did you really think that I owed you a big favor and couldn't repay it? Each and every one of you thought that I saved your lives more than you saved my life. But now, Hua Qianshou declared proudly, I helped you. Get your revenge. Now you owe me. You must remember to pay me back. You got your revenge. Everyone was stunned. When Boss Yi was attacked, it was King of Zhongyuan who did it. Xiang Kuangren's incident was also King of Zhongyuan's doing. And Shi Yunfeng's incident. It was King of Zhongyuan who took a fancy to Shi Yunfeng's wife. He schemed against Shi Yunfeng and killed him. Cheng Guiying's incident was also King of Zhongyuan's doing. Hua Qianshou gritted his teeth and said, these things. I knew some of them, but I didn't know some of them. I didn't have time to stop some of them. When old Shi died and Cheng Guiying's girl was kidnapped, I decided to counterattack and kill Jun Taifeng's entire family. I hid in the Wang residence for so many years. Finally I found a chance. I got rid of King of Zhongyuan's henchmen. It was me who told. 100 years of loyalty. I am that bastard's confidant. I am a loyal dog. I know every single one of his mistresses. I know every single one of his illegitimate children. I know every single one of his illegitimate daughters. The last few illegitimate daughters. I destroyed their martial arts and sold them. Ha ha ha. Cheng Guing, this is the interest I got from my granddaughters. Those few. Ha ha ha. They are quite fair. If you have time, you should go and take care of their business. I have already killed that bastard's bloodline. But I still have to thank him. Hua Qianshou laughed wildly. He spat out a mouthful of blood and gasped for breath. Thank you, Jun Taifeng. Ha ha. You are such a fucking idiot. You brought me here so that I can tell these guys about my glorious deeds. You fucking. Why do you have to listen to them again? Ha ha. Do you have fun listening to them? Jun Taifeng stared at him. Just tell them. If you don't tell them what you have done and how much you have sacrificed, they won't risk their lives to fight me to the death. I know you guys are old foxes. If you want to run away, I can't catch you all. I have to give you guys a reason to fight me to the death. I believe you. You said that after what you have done, as long as you are here, they would rather die than run away. I said that I will let you watch your brothers die one by one in front of you. I won't go back on my words. Later I will pull out their tendons and skin them. You let me taste the feeling of being separated from my own flesh and blood. I will let you taste it too. King Zhongyuan laughed crazily. Hua Qianshou, why don't you have a family? You old bastard. Why don't you have a family? I will enjoy it even more that way. Hua Qianshou was still laughing. He said viciously, I don't necessarily have a family. Those illegitimate daughters of yours. I have enjoyed them several times. Maybe they already have my seed? Ha ha. You can go and check. Find out which one is mine. The two of them cursed each other. Their filthy words were endless. They were extremely vicious. However, Yi Chongqing, Xiang Kuangren, Wen Xingtian, Chang Gaing, Lu Yichuan, Grandmusher, and Yu Jiaren were all trembling. The main culprit. It was him, King Zhongyan. When Xingtian pulled out his sword with a clang, his long-lost name, 100,000 Slaughter, reappeared in the world. Sword light wrapped around his body. He suddenly shouted, "Today's battle, either you die or I die. Jun Taifeng, show me your weapon." On the other side, Hua Qianshou was coughing. His voice had become unprecedentedly weak. "Brothers, remember. Live on. Play with more women for me. Do more bad things. If you dare to leave with me, I will look down on you." Even though their hearts were grieving to the extreme, Yi Chongqing and the others still felt a burst of speechlessness. This guy's temper hadn't changed after so many years. He still didn't want to be a good person at all. At the last moment, in such a sad atmosphere, the words he said still made them want to beat him to death. Chapter 772. Are you done with your last words? The king of Zhongyuan laughed wildly. Hua Qianshou, old bastard, don't die. Keep your last breath. Watch me kill all your brothers in front of you. Hua Qianshou laughed desperately. Good, good, good. Today, I will open my eyes and watch the king of Zhongyuan's bloodline be completely wiped out. Ha ha ha. Brothers, kill him. Kill him for me. His bloodline is gone. Kill him and it will be clean. Ha ha ha. Sword light flashed, solemn and magnificent. The king of Zhongyuan's sword of King Path was the first to strike. Yellow light flashed, and the sky-crossing cross flashed. When Xingtian let out a shrill cry and took the lead to transform into a ball of dazzling sword light, as he rushed forward. At this moment, when Xingtian had fused all of his cultivation into this single sword strike. Old bastard! I will kill you! Xiang Kuangren's sky piercer, Chang Gaing's long saber, Yi Chongqing and Lu Yichuan's swords, and Yu Jiaren's mountain river sword all struck out at the same time. Their target was King of Zhongyuan Jun Taifeng. When Xingtian was in the middle, and the others attacked together. They attacked from above, below, left, and right. Once they attacked, it was a battle formation that they were extremely familiar with. Although Shi Yunfeng was not here, Yu Jiaren, with a long sword in her hand, made up for this flaw with a perfect posture. The six masters attacked with all their strength, intending to kill. Hua Qianshou was lying on the ground, tilting his head desperately to watch the battle. Suddenly, tears came out of his eyes and he murmured, "Battle formation. This is a battle formation." With a loud bang, the battle began in an instant. There were 7 people on both sides. Everyone's eyes were red and they were all crazy. They only wanted to kill each other. There was only one word in everyone's mind: revenge. Yi Chongqing and Wen Xingtian only had one thought, and so did the king of Zhongyuan. Revenge. Both sides were crazy. On the other side, Zhou Xiaoduo and Zhou Xiaonian, who were alarmed by the noise nearby, hurried upstairs. They were relieved to see that their parents were fine. Something happened to Principal Yi. I have to go and take a look. Zhou Xiaoduo's heart burned with anxiety as he flew away. Zhou Xiaonian followed him. Will he be all right? Wu Yuding asked worriedly. I'm fine. Zhou Chonglu said, I've just asked Xiaoyu, and she's already arranged everything. Jun Taifeng, this is the final madness, the madness after losing his mental balance. He can't see past everything, and he feels that everyone has betrayed him. He doesn't want to live anymore, and that's why he's doing this. You don't want to live anymore? Wu Yuding was a little puzzled. Yeah. Zhou Chonglu told him what he heard from Yu Dongtian. Wu Yuding sighed as she listened. She didn't expect Hua Qianshou's revenge to be so extreme. If it were an ordinary person, most of them would just wait for an opportunity to kill. Very few people would really eliminate the source of the trouble, and even rape the victim's daughter, but this snake gentleman Hua Qianshou's revenge was from the cruelest and most vicious point of view. He only had one goal from the beginning, to end his family line, and to humiliate and ravage. So he did everything in the most extreme, most ruthless, most vicious, and even the dirtiest, most despicable, and most extreme way of revenge. No wonder the king of Zhongyuan was driven crazy by him. and didn't want to live anymore. Originally, the king of Zhongyuan, who knew that he had lost, had planned to live the rest of his life peacefully and not cause any more trouble. This was the last dignity and care that the four great generals gave him. But Hua Qianshou didn't want to let him go, because he knew that he hadn't avenged his brothers yet, and he couldn't let it end like this. That was why he had directed this play, and led the situation to the current state. Wu Yuding wanted to say that this was too cruel, but when she thought of the things the king of Zhongyuan had done all these years, which one of them wasn't cruel to others? Now that he suffers such revenge, he deserved it. This was the cycle of karma. This battle had entered a white-hot state from the very beginning. It had only been half a minute, but everyone was already injured. When Xingtian's shoulder was dripping with blood, Cheng Gaing's back had a bloody wound, Yi Chongqing's face was bleeding, Lu Yichuan's right hand was limp, and Grandma Shi was spitting blood. Xiang Quangren exerted the most strength, but he was also the most severely shaken, bleeding from his 7 orifices, and his 5 internal organs were burning. The king of Zhongyuan's condition wasn't much better. One of his ears was missing, and his face was covered in blood. His shoulder was also dripping with blood. But the king of Zhongyuan was the one who suffered the least injuries. He shouted crazily, "Hua Qianshou, watch and see. The first one to die in front of you will be Wen Xingtian." Before he finished speaking, his body spun and the air trembled. The space was faintly distorted, and Yi Chongqing and the others were pushed out of the battle. His sword was pointed at Wen Xingtian. Sky Soar Realm. Yi Chongqing was shocked and he shouted, "Xingtian, retreat." The king of Zhongyuan had broken through to the Sky Soar Realm? Why should we retreat? When Xingtian let out a fierce roar. The sword in his hand was cold, and the sword light seemed to explode. He attacked with all his might. "How long can you retreat for? Let's fight." When Xingtian roared, "He's just a Sky Soar Realm induced by drugs. I'm not afraid of him." Instead of retreating, he charged at the king of Zhongyuan. Everyone could see that when Xingtian's muscles were bulging, and his body was expanding. Clearly, when Xingtian was planning to self-detonate and risk his life to fight the king of Zhongyuan. He wanted to create an opportunity for his brothers to perish together with the king of Zhongyuan. Although when Xingtian's cultivation was much lower than the king of Zhongyuan's, he was still in peak condition. His spiritual energy and soul were still intact. Even a Sky Soar Realm cultivator couldn't underestimate the power of his self-detonation. If it were a Sky Soar Realm cultivator who had survived hundreds of battles, when Xingtian's self-detonation wouldn't be able to stop him. However, the king of Zhongyuan had always lived like a prince. Although he had plenty of battle experience, the gap between him and Wen Xingtian, who had survived hundreds of battles, was like heaven and earth. Therefore, Wen Xingtian instantly determined that his self-detonation would be effective. Revenge. When Xingtian roared, his eyes filled with hatred. Blood feud. The king of Zhongyuan saw Wen Xingtian coming at him menacingly, but he didn't panic. He swung his sword of King Path several hundred times and met Wen Xingtian head-on. He had absolute confidence that after this attack, Wen Xingtian wouldn't exist in this world anymore. Similarly, Wen Xingtian wouldn't have the chance to come into contact with him. Although the power of his self-detonation was great, it would be futile as long as he didn't come into contact with him. At this moment, a cool breeze suddenly appeared, and the whole space suddenly became cold. A girl in white silently appeared and flew over. The snow-like sword in her hand was extremely cold, and it turned into surging sword energy that filled the sky. Swoosh! The sword light pierced through the king of Zhongyuan's Sky Soar Realm cultivator's spatial seal, causing the surging cold air to freeze the world. The snow-like sword landed on the king of Zhongyuan's sword of King Path. The person who attacked was Zhuo Xiaonian. With a pew sound, the two swords intersected, coming into contact with each other. The king of Zhongyuan only felt a bone-piercing coldness that suddenly traveled from the hand holding the sword to his elbow. In an instant, his entire right hand didn't seem to belong to him, and he couldn't feel anything. His sword technique also collapsed, and he couldn't make a move. Just as Wen Xingtian said, he was only a Sky Soar Realm cultivator who had been raised by medicine, and his spiritual energy was far from a real Sky Soar Realm cultivator. As for his combat experience, he was far from a real Sky Soar Realm cultivator. The king of Zhongyuan was both shocked and furious. He snorted. Where did this little bitch come from? You're courting death. His empty left palm suddenly turned golden and jade-like, and he slammed it out madly. Even though the two of them had only been in contact for a short while, the king of Zhongyuan had already keenly sensed that the woman who had appeared out of nowhere might have created a result that was almost like a dream, but at the end of the day, she only had a unique cultivation technique. Her cultivation realm was only SOSO, and he had a high chance of killing her with one strike. Zhou Xiaonian's pretty face was as cold as frost. Her white dress fluttered in the wind, and her sword was light and graceful. She was like a fairy dancing in the wind. Hundreds of sword strikes in succession carried extreme coldness that could freeze all things, and completely blocked the king of Zhongyuan's attack. She was only at the peak of cloud transformation realm, and she hadn't even reached the god reigning realm. However, her foundation and accumulation were so profound that any expert would be stunned by her. The king of Zhongyuan had exhausted most of his energy to perform the Sky Soar Realm spatial seal, leaving Yi Chongqing and the others outside the battle. He was facing Wen Xingtian alone. She had seized the opportunity to enter, and it could be said that she had seized the moment when Jun Taifeng's strength was at its lowest. Chapter 773. Xiang Quangren took the lead. With a loud roar, he descended from the sky like a god, his overlord halberd smashing down like a mountain-splitting axe. At this moment, the king of Zhongyuan's left and right hands were frozen, and his internal organs were invaded by Zhou Xiaonian's cold air. His combat strength had been reduced by more than half. With Zhou Xiaonian's current cultivation, she could only attack once in a battle of this level, even if she concentrated all her cultivation and aimed at the moment when the opponent's strength was reduced. However, this one attack was enough to turn the tide of the battle and turn defeat into victory. Faced with Xiang Quangren's fierce attacks, the king of Zhongyuan did not dare to take them head-on. He quickly swayed his body and constantly changed his mysterious footwork, trying his best to avoid the continuous attacks that were like a storm. When Xingtian moved forward and stabbed the king of Zhongyuan's thigh with his sword, the king of Zhongyuan did not make a sound and kicked Wen Xingtian away. Lu Yichuan stabbed the queen of Zhongyuan's waist with his sword but was kicked in the chest. He spat out blood and retreated. Xiang Quangren once again descended from the sky, the overlord's halberd striking the prince of Zhongyuan's back like a thunderbolt. With a dull thud, the prince of Zhongyuan let out a muffled groan as his body lunged forward, directly meeting Yi Chongqing's sword head-on. With a poof, the sword pierced through his shoulder. However, the prince of Zhongyuan's yuan qi surged all over his body, causing Wen Xingtian's sword, which was originally stuck in his right leg, to fly out, the hilt ruthlessly hitting Yi Chongqing's chest. Then, blood spurted out from the wound on his leg, and hit Yi Chongqing's face like a 1,000-pound hammer. Yi Chongqing grunted and fell to the sky. He was knocked into the stars and could not distinguish between anything and everything. Roar! With a loud roar, the king of Zhongyuan's right hand, which could barely move, blocked Changgaing's attack. Unfortunately, he was not as agile as usual and 3 of his fingers fell off. However, the king of Zhongyuan grunted and the yellow light on his body suddenly flashed wildly. Suddenly, blood spurted out from the broken fingers on his hand, knocking Changgaing's sword aside. The sword was covered in frost. The king of Zhongyuan took advantage of the moment when his fingers were cut off to release the cold air that invaded his body and counterattacked Changgaing. Changgaing roared, his face covered in frost. The Zhongyuan king channeled all of his attack power into his body and forced the icy power out of his hands. For this, he paid the price of severe internal injuries. The 2 blood swords even caused him to spit out half of the blood in his body. Zhongyuan's head was dizzy and his eyes were blurred. However, the other result of doing so was that the 6 of them wouldn't be able to seize the opportunity to beat him to death due to his stiff body. Zhou Xiaonian's ice seal had created an opportunity to instantly kill the king of Zhongyuan. However, the king of Zhongyuan's cultivation was too high a level. Was of the king of the sky realm, was of Zhongyuan's S of S's. Although he had to pay a hefty price with his Sky Soar realm cultivation base, he was still able to put up a fight against them. Just as the king of Zhongyuan was rejoicing over his choice and circulating his inner qi to allow his body to regain its agility, a cold light suddenly flashed. The mountain and river sword in Grandma Shi's hand flew out and shot over like a shooting star, piercing into the king of Zhongyuan's chest. This desperate gambit was the culmination of Grandma Shi's lifetime's cultivation. The king of Zhongyuan's assessed combat strength was depleted, and his body was still stiff. Yet he was hit. Just as Grandma Shi was rejoicing over her success, the king of Zhongyuan grunted. Not only did the mountain and river sword fail to penetrate his body, but it also bounced off. A soft crack was heard, indicating that one of the king of Zhongyuan's ribs was broken. However, such a powerful attack only achieved this little result. His dragon robe is a treasure. Xiang Kuangren roared. The overlord halberd descended again. Xiang Kuangren had already come to this conclusion when he attacked the king of Zhongyuan's back. Grandma Shi's attack further confirmed this conclusion. However, the king of Zhongyuan had already activated the golden jade hand with his left hand and slammed his palm on the overlord halberd. Xiang Kuangren roared as the overlord halberd flew out of his hand and into the night sky. His body was also sent flying like a broken ball. This was a long story. However, a series of unforeseen events happened in the blink of an eye. Out of the 7 people who were fighting, 6 of them were already heavily injured. The king of the Zhongyuan roared as he prepared to follow up with another attack. Although he was heavily injured and his combat strength was greatly reduced, he was still a Sky Soar realm expert after all. His endurance was far greater than Xiang Kuangren and the others. Especially since he had already broken through the ice seal, he had regained his mobility. In this battle where both sides were heavily injured, the king of Zhongyuan regained the upper hand. Although he was in a sorry state and was heavily injured, with his limbs injured and even his fingers cut off, he was still the strongest among everyone present. He was far above everyone else. At this moment, the surrounding atmosphere changed again. The temperature of the entire place suddenly changed from the bone-chilling cold to the scorching heat of summer. In an instant it became extremely hot. A huge sun suddenly appeared, and another figure flew into the air. The light was so dazzling that everyone present could not see anything. A young man's voice shouted, "Eat my sword!" The king of Zhongyuan laughed maliciously. Although he could not see because of the sudden light, his ability to listen to the wind did not diminish. He could still take advantage of the situation and launch a large-scale counterattack. In particular, the person who shouted just now had a cultivation base that was not enough to reach the apex. At most, he was only at the cloud transformation realm. He was even weaker than the girl who attacked just now. The king of Zhongyuan's sword of the king was brazen. It was mixed with the power of a torrential river. However, with a loud boom, 2 huge hammers arrived with great force. One of the hammers smashed onto the king of Zhongyuan's sword like the thunder god splitting the sky, while the other smashed directly onto the king of Zhongyuan's palm. With a muffled bang, a hidden cold light flew out at an extremely fast speed. Shuo Duo let out a blood-curdling scream as he flew back like a rubber ball under the violent impact without any fuss. Although he had used the hammer to smash the sword and the hammer to the palm, catching the enemy off guard and taking advantage of the situation, Shuo's cultivation base was worlds apart from the king of Zhongyuan's. Could not be measured by logic. He could not even withstand the most basic rebounding force. If it were not for the fact that the hammers had already neutralized more than 80% of the rebounding force, this strike would have been enough to kill Shuo Duo. However, the effect of Shuo Duo's attack was immediate, and the effect was outstanding. The king of Zhongyuan closed his eyes abruptly. This cold light shot straight into his right eyelid. Even though he circulated his energy with all his might to resist, that cold light still broke through the vital chi seal on his eyelid and pierced halfway into his eye. The 7-inch all pierced a full 3 inches into his eyeball. The king of Zhongyuan's right eye was destroyed just like that. A gush of black blood also spurted out. The king of Zhongyuan staggered in excruciating pain. He cursed furiously, "Despicable!" The other party shouted, "Eat my sword!" Under the strong light, the king of Zhongyuan's vision was blocked. Although he could determine the direction of the other party's attack with his ability to listen to the wind, he could only use his sword to meet the other party's sword. In the end, what he received was a huge hammer. 2 consecutive hammers, one on his sword and the other on his hand. Both his hand and sword were destroyed. More importantly, a hidden weapon that came out of nowhere suddenly appeared. And the moment it appeared, it was already right in front of his eyes. It pierced his eyes, and there was no room for him to dodge. At that moment, the king of Zhongyuan was in so much pain that he wanted to die. This was the first time in his life that he had been plotted against so viciously. He was a noble to begin with. Even though his cultivation base was great, when it came to real battle experience, he was far from being able to compare to Wen Xingtian and the others. If Wen Xingtian was attacked while he could not see anything, his first choice would definitely be to retreat. However, when the king of Zhongyuan instantly determined that the other party's cultivation base was not high, he chose to move forward and wanted to kill the other party instantly. That was why he suffered such a great loss that he could practically be said to have died with a remaining grievance. Yes, there was also the fact that he had been injured repeatedly, his body was damaged, his body was cold and hot, the rotation of ice and fire, and other factors that greatly affected the king of Zhongyuan's senses. If that were not the case, with the ability of a Sky-Soar realm cultivator to listen to the wind, how could he possibly be able to tell that there was such a huge difference between the attack from a sword and a huge hammer? The king of Zhongyuan's luck had deteriorated, and even the situation that should not have happened at all had happened. Zhou Xiaoduo, who was sent flying by the huge force, was caught by Zhou Xiaonian. He tilted his head and spat out a mouthful of blood. Panting, he muttered, as expected of an expert, "Truly amazing." Then he muttered, "How dare he insult my wife? If I don't hit him twice with my hammer, I won't feel at ease. Even if he's a heavenly king, I'll still hit him twice with my hammer. I can't even bear to insult my wife." Humph. Even at such a critical moment, Zhou Xiaonian did not know whether to laugh or cry. At the same time, she felt an inexplicable sweetness in her heart. While circulating her energy to heal him, she pouted and grumbled, "Only you can do that." Zhou Xiaoduo's attack just now had been well planned. First, he used the blazing sun divine art to create a huge sun to confuse the enemy's eyes. Then he called out for a sword, but in fact, he used his hammer to confuse the enemy's judgment. The key to defeating the enemy was the surprise attack with the hidden weapons. In fact, what he used were 2 hidden weapons. He wanted to destroy the king of Zhongyuan's eyes and end this battle in one fell swoop. However, when he used the second hidden weapon, the surging energy was already close to him. His body involuntarily retreated, and as he leaned back instinctively, the hammer was deflected and sent flying. The wind howled as Cheng Gang rushed over with a face full of frost. The 6 of them were fearless again. They surrounded the king of Zhongyuan and attacked him crazily, as if they were hanging on his body. The king of Zhongyuan's left hand was crippled by the hammer, and the sword in his right hand was bent into the shape of a bow. One of his eyes was blinded, and some of the awl's tip had penetrated his brain. This was the moment when the pain was the most intense. At the same time, it was also the moment when his mind was the most muddled. It was also the best opportunity to kill him. The 6 of them were experienced fighters. How could they give the king of Zhongyuan a chance to catch his breath? Amidst the king of Zhongyuan's crazed roars, the storm of attacks continued. At this moment, he had already lost count of how many attacks he had received. The attacks were like raindrops falling on his body, limbs, and bones. With a hysterical roar, the yellow light exploded for the last time. An unparalleled power accompanied by a mouthful of blood crazily spurted out. Chapter 774. Boom! A violent force erupted from the king of Zhongyuan's body. Cheng Gang, Wen Xingtian, Yu Jiaran, and Lui Chuan were sent flying at the same time. Their bones cracked in midair. Xiang Quangren took 3 steps back. His tall body collapsed as he spat out mouthfuls of blood. The overlord halberd in his hand broke into 3 pieces. Cheng Gang and Yu Jiaran's mouths were dripping with blood as they spat out a piece of flesh. Both of them hated the king of Zhongyuan to the extreme. Even if they were sent flying, they still bit onto the king of Zhongyuan's flesh with all their might and tore it off. Meanwhile, Yi Chongqing, who had the highest cultivation, was still fighting the king of Zhongyuan with all his might. Both of their limbs were wrapped around each other. Yi Chongqing refused to let go no matter what, allowing his bones to crack. His brothers had already lost their ability to fight. If the king of Zhongyuan managed to break free from him, they would die immediately. Yi Chongqing fought with all his might. With a boom, both of them fell to the ground at the same time and continued to roll on the ground. The two of them roared madly and angrily. They rolled around on the ground, throwing punches at each other. Suddenly, Yi Chongqing's hand stabbed viciously into the prince of Zhongyuan's left eye, his only remaining eye. Both of the king of Zhongyuan's eyes were crippled. The king of Zhongyuan kept vomiting blood, and Yi Chongqing was also vomiting blood. The bones in their bodies were cracking and breaking in many places. However, their forelegs were intertwined with each other, and neither of them allowed the other's leg to break free to attack. Their only remaining hand was frantically hitting the other's body. Meanwhile, the king of Zhongyuan's remaining hand had already turned into a bone club. Even his fingers and palm were gone. Every time he hit Yi Chongqing, he felt more pain than Yi Chongqing. "Give me back my brothers' lives." Yi Chongqing seemed to be unaware of pain. He was only left with the thought of attacking madly as he roared with all his might. "Give me back my brothers' lives." The king of Zhongyuan also roared as he attacked with all his might. The king of Zhongyuan's yellow robe, which was obviously a treasure, was now riddled with holes. There were 30 to 40 spots on his body that were constantly spurting blood, revealing his white bones. The flesh on his neck was gone, and his cervical vertebrae were connected with cracking sounds. There were 5 or 6 slash marks on his scalp, and not a single strand of hair remained. There was a hole in his stomach, and half of his intestines were hanging out. His injuries were so severe that they could have been fatal. However, the king of Zhongyuan was attacking with all his might, completely ignoring his own injuries. It was true that Yi Chongqing did not care about his own safety, but the king of Zhongyuan was even more despairing at this moment. Chang Gaing staggered to his feet, roaring with all his might as he leaped forward. He grabbed the prince of Zhongyuan's intestines that were still on the ground and laughed bitterly. "Xiao, you're still alive. Watch me avenge you." With a loud roar, he desperately tried to pull it out, and his body desperately retreated. With this pull, he really used up all his strength. He was already like a lamp that had run out of oil, but he still managed to pull a full 3 to 4 meters away. The king of Zhongyuan's screams instantly turned into ghostly wails and howls. He stopped attacking Yi Chongqing. His bony left hand desperately held onto his intestines, and he allowed Yi Chongqing to attack him. His intestines were straightened in midair by dust and gravel. Both of them were roaring with all their might. With a snap, his intestines broke. Chang Gaing fell to the ground, holding half of his intestines. He put them in his mouth and chewed furiously. "June Taifeng, I'm going to eat you, I'm going to eat you. I'm going to eat you. Ah." On the other side, the king of Zhongyuan continued to howl miserably. Yi Chongqing roared and continued to beat him up. Yu Jiaran staggered to her feet, raised her mountain and river sword, and slashed down fiercely. Wherever the sword light passed, the king of Zhongyuan's legs were separated from his body. The king of Zhongyuan howled miserably. Suddenly, yellow light flashed, and he flew up, crashing into Yu Jiaran's chest. Yu Jiaran screamed and flew backward, blood spurting out of her mouth. The king of Zhongyuan fell down fiercely. His broken thighs immediately stabbed into the ground, and he howled miserably again. Now both of his hands were crippled. His right hand was like a smashed bamboo, broken into pieces. Only half of his left hand was left. Both of his legs were chopped off, and both of his eyes were blinded. Even his intestines were pulled 3 to 4 meters away by Chang Gaing. After the last headbutt, he no longer had any attacking power. However, he was still shaking his head left and right, howling miserably and shouting hoarsely, "Die! Die! All of you must die!" Yi Chongqing, who had fought him for the longest in close combat, had more than half of his bones broken. He was gasping for his last breath. At the last moment, he used his lifetime's cultivation and his own body to lock down the king of Zhongyuan's explosion. Otherwise, 1 or 2 of Wen Xingtian and the rest would have died. That was the king of Zhongyuan's last breath of origin energy. If he was not careful, it would be an extreme self-explosion. But it did not matter now. The king of Zhongyuan's last breath of origin energy had been exhausted. It was impossible for him to self-explode. Yu Jian and Chang Gang slowly crawled towards the king of Zhongyuan on the ground. Their eyes were filled with extreme hatred. At this time, the two of them were also completely exhausted. They didn't have much strength left in their bodies. As they crawled, the bones in their bodies cracked. However, their gazes were steady. They relied on their willpower to persevere. They couldn't bear to see this bastard die in front of them. They couldn't accept it. They must kill him with their own hands. They must cut off his last breath. When Xingtian's legs were broken, but he was still crawling forward with his elbows. Lu Yichuan was unconscious on the ground. Qianshou. When Xingtian roared hoarsely, Qianshou, hang in there. Hang in there for me. This bastard is going to die in front of you. Sure, Yunfeng, brother, watch from the heavens. We have avenged you. Avenged. When Xingtian murmured. Finally, he could not hold on any longer and fainted on the ground. Far below the stairs, Hua Qianshou was still twisting his neck to look over. His face was still filled with a cruel smile. However, there was no longer any light in his eyes. Above his mouth, a lit cigarette had already burned to the end. The ashes fell on his lips. He did not know when this man, who did not know how his descendants would evaluate him in his life, had completely stopped breathing. In the end, he was one step ahead of the king of Zhongyuan. Finally, Grandma Sher and Chang Gang crawled to the front of the king of Zhongyuan. The two of them roared angrily and pounced forward, forgetting everything. The short sabers and broken swords in their hands ruthlessly stabbed into the king of Zhongyuan's body again and again. Pull it out. Stab it again. Pull it out again. At this moment, the king of Zhongyuan could no longer resist. He groaned and cursed viciously on the brink of death, until Granny Sher bit his throat. With a snap, she crushed his laryngeal bone, broke his windpipe and broke his blood vessels. The king of Zhongyuan finally lost his voice. But Cheng Gang and Yu Jian were still crazily stabbing, slashing, biting, tearing. Rumble. The king of Zhongyuan's head rolled on the ground. Cheng Gang used the last bit of his strength to jump up and press the head under his body. He gasped for breath and stabbed the broken sword in his hand with all his strength. Sure. Grandpa has avenged you. Yunfeng, Qianshou, brother has avenged you. Avenged. Ah! Cheng Gang raised his head and roared. Suddenly, he fainted because of exhaustion. On the other side, Yu Jian was still biting the king of Zhongyuan's body. Give me back Yunfeng. Give me back my husband. Give me back. Give me back. As she bit, big drops of tears fell down. Zhou Xiaoduo and Zhou Xiaonian, who had been watching for a long time, couldn't help but shiver. They looked at each other and felt that their teeth were chattering. They were the two people who were in the best condition. Zhou Xiaonian wasn't even seriously injured. She still had the strength to fight. However, what they saw in front of them was too exciting and shocking. It was far beyond their knowledge and experience. They didn't move for a long time and were stunned on the spot. There was such a terrible hatred in the world. The power of hatred was so great. In fact, if the two of them hadn't intervened in this battle, the result would have been reversed. As the king of Zhongyuan said, he would have killed all of Hua Qianshou's brothers in front of him. Finally, there was no more movement. From the beginning to the end, Yinyang Guest and the Netherworld Assassin, who were in the air, had been watching this battle. They had seen the insufferably arrogant king of Zhongyuan die miserably. The Netherworld Assassin was trembling all over. He stared straight as if he was in a nightmare. His forehead was full of cold sweat. Let's go. Yinyang Guest also felt that his body was full of cold sweat. Okay. I'll go to the Sun Moon Pass. The Netherworld Assassin was trembling all over. This cruel scene made this experienced Jianghu man, who had killed countless people, have a subtle feeling of being scared out of his wits. Okay. The two of them disappeared while trembling. In the void, there were a few people who had been watching quietly from the beginning to the end. Why didn't they do anything? Isn't the price they paid a bit too tragic? We can't do anything. Yu Dongtian took a deep breath. This is their revenge. If we do something, we won't let them vent their anger. That boy and girl. They are their students. It's natural for them to avenge their teacher. If they couldn't win, we would have intervened. But since they exhausted Jun Taifeng, we don't have to do anything. This is what they deserve, what they deserve. Understood. The other person sighed softly. The descendants of the imperial war god are gone. Just like that. Marshal Shimen looked down bitterly. The request of his old brother was still ringing in his ears. Now he had to watch his son being killed by a group of people in the most cruel way. Can you commit crimes as you wish after gaining merits? Yu Dongtian glared at him. If I have a son, can I kill all of you? Continue to live a carefree life? Chapter 775. Merits and demerits. When it doesn't involve principles, there can be friendship. But when it involves fundamental problems, merits and demerits can't be mixed together. Yu Dongtian said coldly. Besides, the king of the Central Plains, Jun Taifeng, should have died long ago. If it weren't for his father, if it weren't for those people in the West Army, he would have been cut into pieces long ago. Yes. Marshal Shimen lowered his head. If anyone in your army dares to take revenge on these people, I'll kill them too. Yu Dongtian looked at Marshal Shimen and said, let me tell you, I won't sympathize with their brotherhood. I promise I won't. I hope not. The heavenly king of the right snorted and said in a low voice, Shimen, let me tell you, the minister is right next door to this villa. He saw the whole thing with his own eyes. After you go back, if your old subordinates really do anything, I think you know what the consequences will be. Marshal Shimen trembled and broke out in a cold sweat. Absolutely not. I promise with my life. If anyone dares to do anything, I'll deal with them first. A cold wind blew. On the ground, a few people were lying on the ground in a mess. Zhou Xiaoduo and Zhou Xiaonian, who finally came to their senses, hurriedly flew down to check on their injuries. With one look, the two of them were horrified. Every one of these people was seriously injured to the extreme, even to the extent of hindering their Taoist foundations. However, as long as they were treated in time, their lives would not be in danger. They quickly gave each of them a bottle of the best spiritual water, and fed them all kinds of healing elixirs. Zhou Xiaoduo rushed into the room and carried out a few mattresses. He put these people on them and then started to treat their injuries slowly. He didn't move them in because Zhou Xiaoduo knew they wouldn't want to. Although it was cold outside and the smell of blood was even worse, they still had a brother here, and they hadn't sent him away yet. At this time, they wouldn't only care about their own injuries. They wouldn't only care about their own safety. As expected, Yi Chongqing was the first to wake up. He murmured, is Jun Taifeng dead? Dead. He was killed by you all. You have taken your revenge. Zhou Xiaoduo nodded vigorously. Yi Chongqing's eyes lit up, and he suddenly began to struggle. Qianshou. Brother, where's my brother? He struggled to look for him. When Xingtian and Lu Yichuan also woke up at the same time. When Xingtian anxiously and hoarsely called out, Qianshou, are you still there? Qianshou. Jun Taifeng was dead. Did you see it? But no one answered. After a long while, the six of them struggled and begged Zhou Xiaoduo to help them sit up. They sat side by side in front of Hua Qianshou. Looking at the motionless Hua Qianshou, they couldn't help but sob and cry. Hua Qianshou was already dead. His corpse had already begun to stiffen, but that strange and vicious smile still remained on his face. Qianshou. When Xingtian and the others cried bitterly, choking with sobs. My brother. Yi Chongqing roared, spat out a mouthful of blood and fainted. He thought that after leaving the army, they would not lose each other again. But he never expected that they would still leave one after another. Qianshou. Chang Gaing stroked Hua Qianshou's face, tears streaming down his face. Don't go. There are only a few of us left in this world. Don't go. Chang Gaing burst into tears. He had taken his revenge. However, his brother was no longer around. Today he had taken his revenge. Only his brother would never come again. A figure flashed. Marshal Shimen appeared in front of them. You guys need to hurry up and treat your injuries. You can't be a group of dragons without a leader. Since you have already taken your revenge, you still have to shoulder the responsibilities that you should shoulder. Marshal Shimen said. Don't think that you only have brothers. You still have so many students. Yes. I'll take you to heal. There's a super nourishment chamber for you to rest in for a night. Heavenly King has also given you elixirs. Here. I'll send someone to set up a morning hall for Hua Qianshou. When you're better, come back and send him off. Thank you, Marshal. Lu Yichuan choked with sobs and said, Marshal, please get a good coffin for my brother first. We can't move now, so we can only ask for your help. We want to use his real name to bury him. No problem. Marshal, Chenggang said. I beg you to leave Jun Taifeng's head behind. Marshal Shimin was silent for a long time. Finally, he slowly nodded. All right, but after you've paid your respects to the dead, I'll send someone to get it. The descendant of the god of war was killed by you just like that. Even if he deserved it, as his father's brother. I don't feel good. We understand Grand Marshal's difficulties. When Xingtian said, Thank you for your understanding, Marshal. They truly understood because they also had brothers. They were brothers to each other. Moreover, there was another brother lying on the ground near them. And this brother of mine is lying here because he wants to avenge us. So they completely understood Marshal Shimin's mentality of letting his brother down. They were brothers of life and death. But Marshal Shimin and Jun Taifeng's father were also brothers who entrusted their lives to each other. Let's go. Marshal Shimin waved his hand, and a dozen people came down from the sky. A few of them lifted the mattress and flew away, while the others stayed behind to clean up the mess. You two quickly go back and heal your wounds. Marshal Shimin looked at Zhuo and Zhuo and said in a gentle but low voice, The martial world is so cruel. Quickly improve yourselves and prepare to enter the secret territory. Yes. Zhuo and Zhuo stuck out their tongues and quickly ran away. Even when he returned home, he was still shaken by the cruelty of today's battle, and trembled incessantly. So a real battle is so cruel. Before this, it was really hard to imagine in Yi Chongqing's courtyard. Marshal, how do we report the news of Jun Taifeng's death? Jun Taifeng's rebellion was exposed, and he committed suicide to escape punishment. Marshal Shimin sighed and said, Report it to His Majesty, and ask His Majesty to give him a posthumous title for the sake of his father's face. As for the aftermath, our Western army will take care of it. My old brothers from back then, I'm afraid they will complain. Complain? They dare to complain? Marshal Shimin said angrily. I was there personally and I didn't dare to say a word. If they have the ability, go find the Heavenly King or the Minister. All of them have bad tempers. Tell them if they don't teach their descendants well in the future, they will end up like Jun Taifeng or even worse. Whoever dares to complain, I don't need anyone else, I will beat him to death. The wind howled in the air. Marshal Dongfang led his men and rushed over as if his life depended on it. I heard that the king of Zhongyuan wants to make things difficult for the retired veterans of our Eastern Army. How did he offend the king of Zhongyuan? Marshal Dongfang's voice carried a strong smell of gunpowder. Damn it, I was too embarrassed to kill him last time, but I gave him face. Where is he? Marshal Shimin's nose and eyes didn't look like eyes. He said, Jun Taifeng was already killed by your men. What else do you want? Grind his bones and scatter his ashes? Killed by my men? Marshal Dongfang froze for a moment, and then said, What about Yi Chongqing and the others? They went to heal their wounds and none of them died. Marshal Shimin felt somewhat suffocated. So that's how it is, ha. Marshal Dongfang laughed. Then it's fine, let's withdraw. Shimin, you have worked hard today, I will treat you to a drink some other day, and we will talk about it then. With a whoosh, Marshal Dongfang flew away with a large group of people. He didn't even arrive at the scene, and flew away faster than when he arrived. He knew very well that he had lost his momentum, and it was Marshal Shimin who was suppressing his anger. If Marshal Shimin really wanted to beat him up, it wouldn't be worth it, and he wouldn't be able to reason with him. All of you are so protective of your children. Sooner or later something will happen. Marshal Shimin gritted his teeth and cursed. After a while, he came to his senses. Damn, the Hidden Dragon High School's matters should be handled by the East Army. Right? You guys are from the East Army. You guys ran away so fast. Old cunning fellow. When we meet next time, I will beat you to death. After Zhuoxiaoduo and Zhuoxiaonian returned, they hurriedly went into the Void Extermination Tower to heal their wounds. Their injuries were very limited, and Zhuoxiaoduo only suffered some minor internal injuries, but they quickly recovered. In the morning, Zhuochanglu and Wu Yuding said goodbye to their children and embarked on their return journey. You two must be well. Wu Yuding hugged her son and daughter. We will call you and send you a video. Okay. Zhuoxiaoduo and Zhuoxiaonian were still worried, but their faces were very relaxed. Dad, Mom, you will come back safely. We will wait for you. Let's go. Dad, Mom, Dad, goodbye. Zhuochanglu and Wu Yuding got into the car. The Gao family was already waiting for them in a luxury car. The couple got into the car and drove out of Fenghai City. They did not say a word for a long time. Xiaoduo, Xiaonian. Wu Yuding finally said in a low mood, I am still worried. What else is there to be worried about? I told you everything clearly. Zhuochanglu had to be relaxed. Our children and grandchildren have their own lives. Don't worry too much about them. What do you know? You don't care about our children at all. How can you be a father like this? Wu Yuding was angry. Zhuochanglu had successfully turned his wife's concern for their children into anger at him. That's how it works. I will bite you to death. They quarreled all the way and went further and further away. Zhuoxiaoduo and Zhuoxiaonian watched their parents leave. Their hearts were heavy. They were not in the mood to practice, talk, eat, or drink. They went into the dimension-destroying tower and sat back to back on the grass. Both of them were in a daze. They were in a daze for a long time. They sighed repeatedly. Even Zhuoxiaoduo, who liked to mess around and take advantage of others, was quiet. He did not tease Zhuoxiaonian for a long time. Chapter 776. Are you okay? You should be okay, right? Zhuoxiaoduo nagged as if he was addicted to it. I'm sure you're okay, absolutely okay. Zhuoxiaonian leaned on Zhuoxiaoduo's back and said softly, Nian Nian cat. It's uncomfortable leaning on my back. Let's stand chest to chest. Little doggy Zhua. Let's fight. Zhuoxiaonian was furious. She leaped up with a long sword in her hand. Other than taking advantage of me, little doggy Zhua has no other thoughts. I have to beat him up. The loser has to do the cat ear cat tail dance. Okay. Zhuoxiaoduo was full of confidence. He activated the Flaming Sun Sutra to the maximum and danced happily. Cat ear dance. Twist your waist. Zhuoxiaoduo shouted loudly. Hence. Zhuoxiaoduo rushed forward excitedly and expectantly. Zhuoxiaoduo was brutally beaten up. Zhuoxiaoduo was so depressed that he died as Zhuoxiaoduo was brutally whipped. He rolled on the ground after being kicked. If you hit me again, I'll take off my pants. Hence, Zhuoxiaoduo, who was beaten to the ground, started to act like a hooligan. He grabbed his belt with both hands and threatened her seriously. His eyes were full of eagerness as if he would show her his but if she didn't agree with him. And from the looks of it, he would show her his pants even if she didn't agree with him. Shameless. Zhuoxiaonian's face was flushed red. She immediately retreated. Based on her understanding of little doggy Zhua, he was really capable of doing that. And he was looking forward to it. After being beaten up as usual, the two of them started to cultivate actively. Pieces of top-grade jade of astral souls quickly turned into powder in their hands. The spiritual energy in the Tower of Void Destruction was getting stronger and stronger. Zhuoxiaoduo started to compress his spiritual energy again, enduring the intense pain. Every time he did this, as long as Zhuoxiaonian was beside him, Zhuoxiaoduo would not make a sound. If Zhuoxiaonian wasn't here, Zhuoxiaoduo would scream himself hoarse. However, with Zhuoxiaonian here, Zhuoxiaoduo wouldn't make a single sound. This was a matter of a man's pride. Do you know what a man's pride is? I can't let Nian Nian think that her man is a weakling who can't even bear a little pain. A man has to be tough. Tough as in tough. I can take off my pants without a word, but I can't be stubborn. Zhuoxiaoduo was determined. In his dantian, the sledgehammer danced. Clang, 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 clang. It's the 25th time. After the compression, he stood up and hammered wildly. When Zhuoxiaonian was done with her cultivation, Zhuoxiaoduo, who thought that his cultivation had improved a lot, once again proposed a bet with the cat's ears. Then he was taught a lesson again, beaten up until he fell to the ground. He threatened to take off his pants again and regained the upper hand. However, after the two of them cultivated, their activities, their dispersal, and their familiarization were all completed in this strange atmosphere. Then they started a new round of cultivation. In other words, their cultivation process started when Zhuoxiaoduo started to make a fool of himself again, when Zhuoxiaonian angrily taught him a lesson, and when someone was beaten to the ground, they started to cultivate again. That it was a cycle that went back and forth. They spent a total of 12 days in the Tower of Void Destruction. Zhuoxiaoduo succeeded in compressing his spiritual energy to 28 times. He vaguely felt that he had reached his limit. He was only half an inch away from being full. It seemed that he could not compress his spiritual energy for another 29 or 30 times. Zhuoxiaoduo was very dissatisfied with this result. He could not achieve his goal. Of course, he would not be happy or satisfied. He was so angry that he wanted to take off his pants. In a fit of anger, he took out a few pieces of supreme grade jade of astral souls and started to cultivate again. Zhuoxiaoduo thought for a while and decided to drag the heart of the sun over and put it near him to assist in his cultivation. He absorbed the heart of the sun from the void with his left hand and the supreme grade jade of astral souls with his right hand. In an instant, abundant spiritual energy rushed into his meridians with an unprecedented momentum. Zhuoxiaoduo was unmoved. He continued to absorb the pure spiritual energy from the supreme grade jade of astral souls, and the extremely fierce yang qi from the heart of the sun rushed to the bottom of his dantian and formed a whirlpool. The spiritual energy in his entire body boiled like a flash flood. Zhuoxiaoduo had predicted this. He immediately diverted his attention to compress his spiritual energy. He continued to absorb as he did so. With this unprecedented assistance, he finally managed to suppress his spiritual energy 2 more times. His spiritual energy had reached a point where it would explode if he did not achieve a breakthrough. He raised his head and drank the 9 heavens spiritual spring liquid. 1 drop. An extremely cool and refreshing feeling quickly spread throughout his meridians and bones from the moment it entered his mouth. With a muffled sound, the clothes on Zhuoxiaoduo's body exploded due to the sudden burst of qi energy. In an instant he was naked and clean. He had finally achieved his goal of taking off his pants. The cool and refreshing air continued to flow through every meridian and every corner of his body. Wherever the cool and refreshing air passed, the pores on his skin would emit a stream of spiritual energy of different colors. Most of the spiritual energy was gray in color, completely different from the ordinary spiritual energy. As the cool feeling circulated, Zhuoxiaoduo's body was like a fountain. The gray hue of spiritual energy spurted out continuously. There were a total of 36,000 streams. In an instant, hundreds of streams converged into the sea. The cool feeling flowed into his dantian. The boiling spiritual energy calmed down instantly after it came into contact with the cool feeling. It even showed signs of being suppressed. The cool feeling enveloped all the spiritual energy in his dantian. Then it slowly seeped in and squeezed. More and more gray spiritual energy was squeezed out. It flowed through his meridians and pores and was expelled from his body bit by bit. After exactly half an hour, Zhuoxiaoduo circulated his spiritual energy. After 1 cycle, he could clearly feel that his spiritual energy had undergone a fundamental change. The purity of his vital essence had reached an unimaginable level. With a single thought, his spiritual energy flowed through his body naturally. It was smooth and comfortable. Compared to before, the change was obvious. It was like the difference between heaven and earth. He checked the total amount again. Fortunately, it's only less than 10%. Zhuoxiaoduo had a rough idea. He had only been cultivating for a short period of time. Although he had used external forces to improve his cultivation, it was mostly with the help of the Jade of Astral Souls, Dragon Blood Flying Dagger and so on. Therefore, the amount of vital essence he had cultivated was still considered pure. Previously, he would compress his vital essence in every realm, which would also make his vital essence purer. It could be said that there were very few impurities in it. Most of the impurities that were squeezed out by the 9 heaven spiritual spring liquid came from the spiritual energy in the jade of astral souls. As for the other impurities, he dared not say that there were none, but there really weren't many. I have to replenish it quickly. Swishaoduo saw that the vital essence in his dantian, which was close to boiling, had calmed down and was completely compressed. It only took up half of the total amount in his dantian. Swishaoduo did some calculations and realized that he had done something wrong. Damn, I can still suppress it at least 10 more times. I have to start cultivating quickly. I don't care anymore. I'll just use the best quality jade of astral souls, the heart of the sun, and the dragon blood flying dagger. I have to complete the process of filling my vital essence as soon as possible. Otherwise, I might not be able to make it in time. Swishaoduo was about to cultivate when he suddenly realized that he was naked. He looked at Swishaonian, who was cultivating and had yet to wake up. He hurriedly tidied himself up and put on his clothes. It's not that I care about my pure body. I don't care if she sees me naked. In fact, I'm very happy to let Nian Nian see me naked however. The important thing is that I can't let Nian Nian know that my clothes will explode after consuming the 9 heavens spiritual spring liquid. I'm waiting for her to consume the 9 heavens spiritual spring liquid. When that time comes, I'll open my eyes wide and watch carefully. When she consumes the 9 heavens spiritual spring liquid, the moment she consumes it, her clothes will explode. Wow. I'm looking forward to it. Swishaoduo was drooling. He felt that the flaming sun sutra below him was automatically activated. For a moment, his second brother was about to soar into the sky like a dragon riding on the clouds. Calm down. Second brother, calm down. Calm down. Swishaoduo gently pressed a certain brother down and used his thighs to clamp him down, comforting him. Now is not the time, just bear with it a little longer. Bear with it a little longer. Don't worry, this little brother will never let you down. One day I'll let you have your fill. After comforting him for a long time, his second brother finally stopped transforming and returned to his original form. Swishaoduo and Swishaonian fought more than 10 rounds in the space-destroying pagoda before they finally came out. His parents weren't around and Swollen wasn't around either. This fellow had been cultivating with Xiangbing every day. He didn't know how he was progressing. Next door, a funeral was being held. Yi Chongqing and the others looked like they had just recovered from a serious illness. They still couldn't walk properly, but they were holding a grand funeral. Hua Qianshou. This was the first time that this name had entered everyone's attention. Yi Chongqing and the others didn't explain much. They just said that their brother had passed away in an accident a few days ago, and they were here to send him off. Everyone was dressed in white, mournfully sending off their brother. Only Swishaoduo and Swishaonian were witnesses at the scene, and had participated in the battle. When Xingtian found an opportunity to tell the two of them everything. When Xingtian's original intention was to use his private channels to spread the news. Hua Qianshou had taken revenge for his brothers. Although his methods were too extreme, too vicious, and too extreme, his feelings for his brothers were truly indescribable. In order to avenge his brothers, he gave up everything and gave up everything. He didn't inform anyone. He became the person directly involved in the destruction of the prince of the Zhongyuan's residence with his own strength. In the end, the prince of the Zhongyuan, who was renowned throughout the world, lost his family and descendants, and even died an unnatural death. When Xingtian felt that such a brother, no matter what he did, was the pride of his life to have such a brother. No matter how bad he was, no matter how he usually behaved. But I have such a brother. I'm proud to have such a brother. I can die without regrets. Let's not talk about Hua Qianshou's character. I just want to ask. In this world, who wouldn't want such a friend and brother? Chapter 777. Swishaoduo's shock was no less than when Xingtian's. As a man, he was at the most hot-blooded young age. He could not resist such brotherhood. The two of them offered incense respectfully. All the male descendants of the Xiang family, the Lu family, and the Cheng family joined the ranks of his relatives and friends. They wore mourning clothes and sent him off. Swishaoduo was filled with emotions. After he came back, under Swishaonian's watch and polishing, he wrote down the entire incident in detail. Then he sent it to Wuxia's company. Wuxia's company was working hard to produce a TV series and movie related to Shi Yunfeng. They were already in the post-production stage, and it was said that they would be released soon. After receiving the latest news from their boss, they attached great importance to it. Of course, the main reason was that this incident was too sensitive. They exposed it through a grapevine, which was even more eye-catching and fascinating. Wuxia's company quickly worked on this incident. In the afternoon, they published an article titled "Shocking. The King of the Central Plains, whose name shook the world and power overturned the imperial court, fell just like that. Come and hit me if I don't shock you so much that your eyeballs will pop out." 1. Was freshly published and entered the public's view. This was just the beginning, but the suspense and hooks in it were enough to write a 7-million-word novel. There were even people in Wuxia's company who strongly suggested that they use the highest price to invite the most handsome, most cultured, most elegant, most cultured, and most cultured author with the surname Feng to write this story. For this, they would not hesitate to pay 10 billion yuan. Of course, in order to keep it a secret, the author's name was Feng Ling the World. This matter was still under discussion, a secret discussion that in an extremely short period of time, there was already a huge uproar on the internet. The main reason was that there were too many people in the outside world who did not know about the destruction of the King of the Central Plains. Many people were surprised when they saw it. The King of the Central Plains fell. They instinctively clicked on it. In a short period of time, a snowball was rolling on the internet, and the snowball was getting bigger and bigger. So, the King of the Central Plains is this kind of person. So, the King of the Central Plains did so many bad things. So, this is the truth. Damn, I really didn't expect this. I'm really shocked. Shocking. My eyeballs almost popped out of their sockets. My lungs are about to explode. My balls are about to explode. In an instant, my 300 million descendants exploded. Editor, you're too awesome. You even know about these private matters. I'm on my knees. My entire body is about to explode. However, Zhuo Duo did not care about these matters after he had explained the initial direction of the discussion. He focused on entering the Tower of Annihilation to practice. On the school field, Li Chenglong was sweating profusely as he cultivated with Meng Zhongjun and the rest of the younger generation of the Gao family. He also wanted to break through to the nascent soul transformation stage in his most perfect state. Meng Zhongjun, Hao Han, and the others also wanted to have more combat experience and accumulate more spiritual qi. As for Li Chenglong's request to spar, they naturally hit it off and were happy to see it happen. As for the 9 Heaven Spiritual Spring, Zhuo Duo did not give it to Li Chenglong. Because if Li Chenglong took it now, he might not be able to make it in time for this operation. Also, at the current stage, at least in Zhuo Duo's opinion, it was not the best time for Li Chenglong to take it. It would be better to take it when he broke through to the cloud transformation stage. The effect would be better and more obvious. He believed that by that time, the brothers would have broken in to a certain extent and could bring Swollen Boy to the Tower of Annihilation to practice at ease, so that his foundation would be more stable. As for now, Zhuo Duo would not take the risk even if father and mothers did not say anything. It wasn't that Li Chenglong wasn't loyal enough, but rather, Li Chenglong's cultivation base, wisdom, composure, and experience in dealing with people weren't at the level where he could share such a shocking secret. The whole environment and atmosphere of the Hidden Dragon High School was to give it their all, using battle as a substitute for training, to cultivate to the extreme and improve to the extreme. After Hua Qianshou's funeral, with Xiang Quangren leading the team and 10 teachers accompanying him, the 2,500 people of the Hidden Dragon High School set off. On that day, the parents sent them off all the way to the outskirts of Fenghai City. It's only 3 months, we'll be back soon. Whether it was the students or the parents, they were reassured by this. The spring festival was coming and the weather was freezing. The border would only be even colder. Under normal circumstances, it was impossible for a war to break out in such a season. In the past hundreds and thousands of years or even longer, it was always like this. The children were only there to gain experience and feel the atmosphere of the battlefield at the border. Although the Sky Surveyor throne had just issued the order for war, no one thought in the worst direction at all. In a season where even a piss could produce a popsicle, what was the point of fighting? Even Xiang Quangren and the teachers leading the team had such thoughts. After they sent the people off, they had to return immediately. After all, there had been too many similar experiences before. The reason why Xiang Kuangren went was because he had been troubled by the strange phenomenon before, and had not been to the front line for too long. He planned to use this trip to find his old brothers and talk about the old days, as well as to make a name for Qianshou. When he was in the army, all of you looked down on him, beating and scolding him every day. How about now? That's how my brother treats all of us. I'm so proud to have such a brother. Having such a brother, not only is my life not a waste, I can boast about it for 3 lifetimes. Are you envious? Are you jealous? The team set off in a meandering manner, accompanied by cheers and laughter, gradually going further and further away. Zhuoxiaoduo was sweating profusely in the dimension-destroying pagoda, trying his best to fight with Zhuoxiaonian. Although he was repeatedly suppressed, knocked down, beaten black and blue, and swollen all over. However, he could also feel that his foundation was becoming more and more solid. He had entered Dao too late. Compared to his peers, there was a considerable gap. With Zhuoxiaonian's current cultivation level, she could firmly suppress Zhuoxiaoduo, and could be said to have an overwhelming advantage. Because of this, she could be like a sledgehammer, pounding Zhuoxiaoduo hard, making his foundation even more solid. Zhuoxiaoduo, for the sake of the erotic benefits after his victory, gave his all in every battle. Hysterical cat ear dance. With a roar of excitement, he hammered his hammer continuously. Cattail dance. Hammer, hammer, hammer. Cat belly dance. Cat pole dance. Cat. Before the last cat dance could be called out, he was already knocked down to the ground by the exasperated Zhuoxiaonian, and then beaten up again. This little bastard only wants to humiliate me. Can't he think of something else? Finally, after countless battles, Zhuoxiaoduo, who had once again sucked dry the dragon blood flying dagger and consumed 50 pieces of supreme-grade astral soul's jade, could no longer suppress the abundant spiritual energy that was once again surging to the peak. The heart of the scorching sun seemed to be as hot as before, but Zhuoxiaoduo could clearly feel that the heat it was emitting was far less than before. He did not know if it was because the energy contained in the heart of the scorching sun had been greatly depleted, or because he had become stronger. Zhuoxiaoduo sat cross-legged in the Tower of Annihilation. He could feel the vortex in his dantian spinning rapidly. It was spinning so fast that even he could not keep track of it. It was extremely fast. As it continued to spin, a small hair-like substance was slowly forming in the center of his energy center. The moment it took shape, Zhuoxiaoduo's body shook, and a stream of black blood spurted out of his nostrils. One of his meridians was suddenly connected, and spiritual energy surged like a torrential tide. In an instant, the spinning in his energy center became 10 times faster. That hair-like fiery red object was slowly growing in size while madly devouring spiritual energy. Zhuoxiaoduo suddenly had an urge to eat. Cotton candy. I really want to eat it. Isn't cotton candy like this? First, it starts to spin bit by bit, and as it spins and spins, it wraps itself around the target bit by bit until it forms a big furry ball. A big furry ball. A big furry ball. Isn't that my second brother? As he thought about it, Zhuoxiaoduo almost laughed out loud. Zhuoxiaoduo was at the critical moment of his breakthrough, and Zhuoxiaonian was naturally fully focused on protecting him. At this moment, she saw that Guy's face had a joyful and wretched smile after his breakthrough. She couldn't help but feel puzzled. Could it be that breaking through to the nascent soul gives one such happy feeling? Why didn't I feel anything when I broke through? At that time I only felt nervous and expectant. Zhuoxiaonian looked at the smile on Zhuoxiaoduo's face, and her heart was filled with doubts. The more she looked at that smile, the more it didn't seem like a good thing. Instead, it seemed like Dog had set a trap for me and wanted to take advantage of me, and he had already succeeded in doing so. This guy. Is he still thinking about bad things at such a serious time? Zhuoxiaonian suddenly felt a surge of anger filling her heart. This bastard. He must be humiliating me in his heart. She had to admit that Zhuoxiaonian's understanding of Zhuoxiaoduo was already at the level of a master. Even the slightest change in his expression could be observed and accurately grasped. This was the way her mother taught her how to control her husband. It was an absolute treasure. Nian you're simple-minded. and you definitely won't be a match for dog in the future. But as long as you can grasp this point, it's enough to deal with most situations. Mom, what point is it? Please enlighten me. Expression, eyes. Mood, expression, thoughts, and eyes. You just need to study the expression on his face. That's enough. When you've studied it thoroughly, no matter how scheming he is, it has nothing to do with you. Mom, why is that? Silly girl. Do you know who a man tells the most lies in his life? Who? You're so silly. In a man's life, the person he deceives the most is his own wife. In a man's life, most of the words he tells his wife are lies. Men are big liars in their bones. But as long as you grasp the changes in his expression, you can tell at a glance when he's lying. When you're in a good mood, you can ignore it, pretend not to know, or even pretend to believe him and act with him. But don't forget to keep it in your heart as a bomb. If you're in a bad mood, just dig it out for him. Just casually dig it out once or twice, and you'll be able to suppress his arrogance. Naturally, he'll be at your mercy. Also, when he's in a bad mood or when he's quarreling with you, men are all animals with a strong sense of self-existence. Once they feel that their status is dropping, they'll often use quarrels to raise their sense of existence and authority in the family. If you're cursed by him, his status can rise for a while, but at this time, as long as you don't show mercy, when he's at his most arrogant, throw out 7 or 8 lies at once. You can completely smash him down. In an instant, his status will be suppressed again. At this time, never. You mustn't be soft-hearted. We should chase after the cornered enemy with courage. You can't give in even if you give in. You have to give in completely before you can withdraw your troops. Xiao Duo is the same as your father. They're both the type who'll lie as soon as they're moved. When they're lying, their expressions won't change, and their hearts won't beat faster. They're the type who's the most difficult to distinguish. But you just have to pay attention. When you're facing this type of man, carefully observe his state before he speaks. Because, when he wants to do something, his face will still have a special micro-expression. Then, he'll often ponder for a while and come up with a draft in his heart. Because Xiao Duo will inevitably do it in one go. His lies will be more convincing than the truth. Remember, as long as he seems to be thinking about something important in front of you, that's when he's about to start lying. If one day Xiao Duo swears to you something that you think is incomparably certain, don't believe him. He must be lying. I'll remember, Mom. Thank you for your guidance. I've learned a lot from your words of wisdom. Today is my nephew's wedding. I'm the witness. I forgot. Cough. I rushed back to my hometown and was scolded badly. Fortunately, I made it in time. Otherwise, I'd be finished. Chapter 778. At this moment, Zhuo Xiaonian looked at the wretched smile on Zhuo Xiaoduo's face and couldn't help but think of her mother's pure teachings. Naturally, she recalled every expression and every detail of Zhuo Xiaoduo's. She had to admit that. When she thought about it, it seemed that every time her dog had an ulterior motive, he would carefully consider it first. Humph! Zhuo Xiaonian's face was full of a rare smile. It was a smile of confidence that victory was in her hands. Dog, you're going to be unlucky in the future. I don't know how many times you'll fall into my hands. I'll give you a nickname early, Braid Brother. Zhuo Xiaoduo, who was in the middle of cultivation, didn't know that his mother had completely sold him out. Zhuo Xiaonian really knew what he was thinking. It was difficult for him to turn the tables in this life. He was now using all his strength to stimulate the qi whirlpool in his dantian, making the fiery red thing become bigger bit by bit. He had consulted many people about this breakthrough before, including Wen Xingtian, Zhuo Xiaonian, Yi Chongqing, and so on. At this time, he was urging his qi whirlpool to materialize more of his qi. In other words, the nascent soul stage was bigger. Wen Xingtian had a very clear explanation about this. The nascent soul stage was like a woman getting pregnant. At the beginning it was only a little dot, but this dot was related to how big it would be when it was finally born. According to Wen Xingtian, some people were like sesame seeds at the beginning, and when they were finally born they weighed 3 to 4 kilograms. Some people were like soybeans, and when they were born they weighed 8 to 9 kilograms. When they were born, they were so weak that they didn't even have the strength to breathe on their own. However, those who weighed 8 to 9 kilograms were very strong when they were born. They could even feel pain when they grabbed people's hands. Think about it, how could it be the same? It had to be said that when Xingtian's analogy was very vivid. But recently, when Zhou Xiaoduo asked his mother about this issue, and told her when Xingtian's argument, Wu Yuding scolded him. Your teacher Wen's theory is correct, but there are many fallacies in using a pregnant woman as an example. At least, his understanding of a pregnant woman is a pile of dog shit. Zhou Xiaoduo didn't care whether it was bullshit or not. When Xingtian had been single for thousands of years, how would he know what pregnancy was? Not to mention a man. Right now, he only knew that his dantian was in the process of forming a nascent soul. It had to be big and strong. The initial size of a soybean is my minimum goal. Peanuts were just ordinary targets. If it could be like a grape or a small apple or even a big pomelo, or even a big watermelon, I can do anything. It was completely possible. In short, the bigger the better. It would be beneficial to the good. It would be delightful if it was huge. With such thoughts in mind, Zhou Xiaoduo tried his best to condense the chi vortex. Traces of the scorching power of the flaming sun sutra spiraled and slowly attached to the fiery red object. Above Zhou Xiaoduo's head, white fog gradually rose and a human figure gradually took shape. It was the image of Zhou Xiaoduo that had been shrunk countless times. As Zhou Xiaoduo's spirit energy circulated more and more rapidly, the white fog became thicker and thicker. The figure of the little person also became clearer and clearer. In the end, it almost condensed into a solid form. The entire formation process lasted for a full 20 minutes. Zhou Xiaoyan stared in shock at the pink little Zhou Xiaoduo on top of Zhou Xiaoduo's head just a little bit. She really wanted to touch it. Suddenly, she remembered that when Xiaoduo was not even a year old, she was lying on the bed looking at this little thing crawling around naked at that time. Zhou Xiaoyan was still young. She touched here and there. In the end, she grabbed a caterpillar-like thing and played with it. Zhou Xiaoduo cried and Wu Yuding rushed in. Her eyes were full of anger and amusement. Zhou Xiaoyan didn't know why, but she remembered this scene now. Her cold face suddenly turned red. She spat and said, "Hooligan Xiaoduo." After a while, with a soft whoosh, the white fog above Zhou Xiaoduo's head quickly returned to his body. Then, a majestic aura spread out from Zhou Xiaoduo's body. Nascent soul transformation, he had finally succeeded. In the eyes of ordinary people, nascent soul transformation was the so-called Great Grandmaster cultivation. In the year when Zhou Xiaoduo had just turned 18, he had achieved it. Nascent soul transformation Great Grandmaster. At this moment, Zhou Xiaoyan felt the majestic aura that suddenly burst out from Zhou Xiaoduo's body. She was even happier than Zhou Xiaoduo. Her eyes were red. Duo, nascent soul transformation. Boo! Zhou Xiaoyan was so happy that she wiped away her tears. At this moment, the figure of the youth who couldn't cultivate in the past, who tormented her to the point of half-death every day, suddenly rushed into her mind. At the figure of the young man who risked his life for her when he just started cultivating and didn't hesitate to change his fate, rushed into her mind. Zhou Xiaoyan pouted and sobbed. At this moment she felt joy, touched and happy. It was indescribable and indescribable. But she just wanted to cry. After a long time, Zhou Xiaoduo withdrew all his aura. At this moment, he felt that his sea of consciousness and spiritual sense had more than doubled. At the moment of the breakthrough, it was as if his whole life had been sublimated. Even his eyesight seemed to have improved a lot. He could clearly feel that he had broken through to a higher level. But when it came to what level he had broken through and what kind of enlightenment he had gained, it was a little vague. He hurriedly looked inside himself to see what was going on. He saw that in his dantian, there was a Shao sun that was the size of a soybean. It was shining brightly in the air, as if it was swallowing and spitting out countless flames. Its whole body was red, and heat was constantly spewing out from within. When he looked at it with his divine sense, he actually felt a stinging pain in his eyes. Size so small. Zhou Xiaoduo was a little dissatisfied. He had already used all his strength and effort. After compressing his own vital essence for nearly 40 times, he had directly used the heart of the sun and the supreme grade jade of astral souls to promote it. In the end, it was only the size of a soybean. Where were the peanuts, grapes, apples, pomelos, and watermelons of his dreams? For a moment, he couldn't help but feel depressed. He sighed subconsciously. When he opened his eyes, he saw Zhou Xiaonian looking at him with tears in her eyes. What's wrong? Why are you crying? Zhou Xiaoduo was confused. What's wrong? No one can bully you in the Tower of Annihilation. Zhou Xiaonian sobbed. She looked like a wrong little girl. You've broken through. Zhou Xiaoduo said yes. Why are you crying for such a good thing? Humph. Zhou Xiaonian hummed and pouted. I'm happy to cry, it's none of your business. Suddenly a surge of joy surged in her heart. She couldn't help but laugh. Then she pouted again but couldn't keep a straight face. She said angrily, can't I? Humph. Finally, she couldn't hold back the joy in her heart. She laughed again. She smiled with tears in her eyes. The tears of joy matched her small face that was like a blooming spring flower. On the other hand, she was annoyed that she didn't hold it in. She stomped her little feet bitterly. The expression on her face at this moment was really indescribable and wonderful. Zhou Xiaoduo was stunned. Wow, this crying and laughing beauty is my wife. He couldn't help but rush forward and hug her. He lowered his head. Nian cat. To save money, I'll omit 2,000 words. After a long time, the two of them sat side by side on the grass of the Tower of Annihilation. Zhou Xiaonian blushed and kept tidying her clothes. She pouted her slightly red and swollen lips. She snorted and threw a tantrum. She didn't even dare to look at Zhou Xiaoduo. She hummed and said, Duo, you've gone too far. I'll tell mother tomorrow and let her punish you. Kill you. Tell her, go ahead and tell her. Zhou Xiaoduo crossed his legs and swayed. Occasionally, he put his right hand in front of his nose and sniffed. He looked relaxed and happy. He said happily, I'll admit that I'm killed by our mother. But I guess she won't. After all, I'm her only son. If she really kills me, she won't have a son or a son-in-law. Then I'll tell father. I'm our father's only son. He won't bear to kill me. Zhou Xiaoduo swayed his legs and said proudly, if they create a second account or something, I might have some scruples. But now, I'm the only one with a main account. The only one. She can only tap my fingers. It won't hurt or itch. As she spoke, she imitated Wu Yuding's actions, pinched her fingers and pointed at the air. Using Wu Yuding's voice, she scolded in exasperation. You. Zhou Xiaoduo immediately stopped. He smiled and spread his hands. That's our mother's punishment. Zhou Xiaonian became more and more angry. Believe it or not, I'll break off the engagement with you. Zhou Xiaoduo turned over and faced Zhou Xiaonian. Like a squatting husky, he suddenly turned over and stood upright. He glared at her. Say that again? I dare you to say it again. As he said that, he stretched out his hands, his fingers flexing. Don't. Zhou Xiaonian hurriedly begged for mercy. I was wrong. Zhou Xiaoduo said arrogantly. I checked my bank account some time ago. A total of 800 million yuan was missing. I didn't tell mom and dad about this. I don't know who spent it. Zhou Xiaonian said angrily, yes, I spent it. What are you going to do about it? You spent it well. You spent it well. Zhou Xiaoduo's eyebrows danced in delight. You should spend it. You spent it well. I'll give you a thumbs up. Duh. What did you buy? I bought a puppy. To put it under my blanket. Zhou Xiaonian pouted. Hurry up and throw that puppy away from me. Zhou Xiaoduo winked with shifty eyes. I'll exchange it for a hot, live one for you. The kind that can talk. You can hug it to sleep, talk, play and sleep with it. Get lost. You're so annoying. Zhou Xiaoduo said. Repetition of words, disgusting heart. Ayaya, little Nian. You. The two bickered for a while, and the atmosphere became more and more cheerful. Chapter 779. How's your condensation? Zhou Xiaonian asked with concern. Do you have a vague feeling? As if you've broken free from some shackles? Or rather, the feeling of breaking through a certain boundary and surpassing a certain realm? Yes, I do. Zhuoxiaoduo perked up. It's a subtle feeling that I can't describe. Humph. Zhuoxiaonian wanted to say something, but she held back and said seriously, I really can't tell you this. Firstly, I might not be able to explain it clearly. Secondly, it's best for you to feel it yourself. I can only tell you that not everyone will have this feeling when they break through to the nascent soul transformation stage. Ordinary nascent soul transformation stage cultivators won't have this feeling. Really? Zhuoxiaoduo wanted to say that he felt it very clearly. How big is your nascent soul? Zhuoxiaonian asked. Mine is only the size of a soybean, and it's hanging in mid-air. Zhuoxiaoduo was a little dejected and said, I heard teacher one and the other say that the average person's qi will sink to the bottom of the dantian, as if it's precipitated and motionless. But mine is suspended in midair, it doesn't seem normal. But it's only this little bit, far less than expected. It's only the size of a soybean, I can't bear to look at it. Sigh. Zhuoxiaoduo sighed. Me too. Mine is in the upper part of my dantian. It's cold and icy, as if there's a bright moon hanging there. The seniors in the Nine Heavens Pavilion told me not to tell anyone. Zhuoxiaonian pouted and said, Mine is not even the size of a soybean. That means I'm already stronger than you? Zhuoxiaoduo's eyes lit up. Those cat ears. Duo, you're asking for death. Zhuoxiaonian took advantage of her anger to get rid of the awkward situation. She jumped up and said, Come up, I'll teach you a lesson. Thus Zhuoxiaoduo let out a strange cry and charged forward, full of vigor. Not long after, Zhuoxiaoduo fell down like a dead dog. Even after the breakthrough, he was still taught a lesson by Zhuoxiaonian. If it hurts, Zhuoxiaoduo began to play dead. Zhuoxiaonian wouldn't be fooled. Continue cultivating, dodo dog. Feinian Mao. Hurry up and cultivate, duo dog. Feinian Mao. Duo dog. Nian cat. Duo dog. As they screamed, they suddenly started fighting again. I told you to call me by my pet name. You called me first. I can call you, but you're not allowed to call me. Nian cat. Bang bang bang. Time passed very slowly in the space-destroying tower. Zhuoxiaoduo and Zhuoxiaonian hardly wasted any time. When they were free, they would bicker in the form of quarrels or bicker in other ways. Sometimes, after finishing their cultivation, they would exchange pointers. Sometimes they would use weapons to exchange pointers. Sometimes they would exchange pointers in other ways. When it came to weapons, Zhuoxiaonian had the upper hand, and Zhuoxiaoduo was no match for her. When it came to other ways, Zhuoxiaoduo had the upper hand, and Zhuoxiaonian was no match for her. This also led to Zhuoxiaoduo declaring confidently that they were evenly matched. When they were free, Zhuoxiaonian tried to communicate with the ice spirit and subdue it. However, the ice spirit seemed to be hesitant. Although it had begun to accept Zhuoxiaonian, it still maintained its cold attitude, and the results were minimal. Zhuoxiaoduo was quite dissatisfied with this. My wife is so humble, and you still dare to put on airs. You don't even treat me better than you. You don't know how to appreciate favors. Zhuoxiaonian wanted to use the flaming sun scripture to scare the ice spirit several times, but she really couldn't bear to do it. She wanted to use gentle methods to subdue the ice spirit. After more than 10 rounds, the ice spirit seemed to feel Zhuoxiaonian's sincerity and love. It was getting closer and closer to Zhuoxiaonian. Although it hadn't accepted Zhuoxiaonian as its master, it didn't reject her. It even agreed that it could occasionally possess Zhuoxiaonian's sword and fight side by side with Zhuoxiaonian. Zhuoxiaonian was so happy that her heart almost melted. She could clearly feel that the time to make the weak ice spirit accept her as its master had begun to count down. When it was time to assemble, Zhuoxiaoduo had already pushed his cultivation to the peak of the middle stage of nascent soul at all costs. Zhuoxiaonian had also suppressed her true essence at the peak of the cloud transformation stage 13 times. The two stood in the villa at the same time and looked at the time. It was 2:30 in the morning. They couldn't help but feel like they were in a dream. They had stayed in the Tower of Emptiness for 110 days, but only 2.5 days and 2 nights had passed in the real world. When they returned to the villa, they actually felt a little strange. Check the messages on your phone, Zhuoxiaonian reminded him. Okay. They took out their phones at the same time. I'll assemble at school at 6:30 in the morning, Zhuo said. We'll assemble again at the Starry Mountains. I'll assemble at the Starry Mountains at 8 in the morning. Zhuo looked at her phone. Okay. Be careful, don't try to be brave. Don't try to be brave, be careful. The two almost said this sentence at the same time. They looked at each other and couldn't help but laugh. There's also a message from Mom and Dad. Take a look. Okay. Zhuo Chonglu and Wu Yuding had just left for 2 days. Although there were messages, they didn't say much. They just said one more sentence to Zhuo Xiaoduo. If you need anything, you can look through the space ring your godfather left you. You may find something. In addition, after you break through the nascent soul, remember to learn the jade pendant that I just gave you. It contains the experience of hammering skills. See if you can use it. Ahem. Zhuo Xiaoduo was a little embarrassed. Before he was about to break through to the nascent soul transformation stage, he had already used the jade pendant after he was beaten up by Zhuo Xiaonian. The understanding of the hammering technique in it had really reached the pinnacle and was unimaginable. Every time Zhuo Xiaoduo read, he felt a sense of enlightenment. He felt that his mind was open and his heart was surging. However, the thing that shocked him the most was that the person who wrote the mental cultivation method seemed to have no limit to what he could comprehend. That was to say, as long as Zhuo Xiaoduo reached a certain level, he could expand at will according to the mental cultivation method and experience. This was the most awesome thing about the hammering skills and the cultivation method. It could be improved as the user's understanding of the realm increased. There was not much time left, so they didn't enter the Tower of Emptiness again. Early in the morning, the sky was a little bright. Li Chenglong's voice called out happily from below. Zhuo, get up. Let's go. Coming. Zhuo Xiaoduo answered and stood up. Wait. Zhuo Xiaonian walked slowly to Zhuo Xiaoduo and stood in front of him, like a little wife waiting on her husband. She carefully tidied up his clothes from top to bottom. Then she said softly, go ahead. Okay. Zhuo Xiaoduo turned around. Wait. Zhuo Xiaonian pursed her lips. What? Zhuo Xiaonian blushed and took 2 steps forward. She looked up and whispered, Duo kiss me. For such a beautiful request, it was like a windfall. Zhuo Xiaoduo would not refuse. He directly gave her a bear hug and kissed her vigorously. After a long while, the two slowly separated. Zhuo Xiaonian's eyes were watery and her face was crimson. She looked at Zhuo Xiaoduo shyly and said, go ahead. Be careful. Don't show off. Heh. Zhuo Xiaoduo giggled and took 2 steps back. Finally, he waved his hand and went out. Li Chenglong's voice came from outside. Wow, Zhuo. Why do you look so happy? Are you in high spirits? Zhuo Xiaoduo said arrogantly. I have broken through to the nascent soul stage. I am now the captain of the nascent soul stage, little Li. Go ahead and lead the way. Yes, sir. Li Chenglong answered. Zhuo, please allow little Li, who has broken through to the middle stage of the nascent soul stage, to lead the way for you. TSK, how shameless. Ha ha ha. Wait, let's go and see Grandmusher first and say goodbye to her. I'm afraid this trial will take a long time. Let's say goodbye in advance so that she won't worry. Then the two of them went over. Although Grandmusher had been recuperating and her serious injuries had not healed, her mental state was excellent. She drove the two of them away with a smile and went to school. Then she returned to her room to rest. Sure. The grudge has been settled. By right, it's time to look for you. But these two little brats, especially that Zhuo Xiaoduo and that frisky monkey, actually made me feel reluctant to part with them. Grandmusher looked at the portrait of Principal Sure on the wall with an apologetic face. Give me a few more years. Let me watch this little monkey grow up. After I have some achievements, I will look for you. I can look for you now, but I can't bear to part with this little monkey. Grandmusher poured a glass of wine apologetically. Sure. Wait for me for a year. The voices of Zhuo Xiaoduo and Li Chenglong walked away. Zhuo Xiaonian's mood gradually calmed down. She was the only one left in the villa. This period of time was really wonderful. How good would it be if it could be like this for the rest of her life? Zhuo Xiaonian thought longingly. She walked slowly upstairs to her parents' bedroom and tidied up the originally tidy room again. She walked in softly and lay on the bed, feeling the lingering smell of her parents. After a few minutes she murmured, "Dad, Mom, you must come back." Then she walked out softly and closed the door slowly. She came to her own room, entered the door and closed it. In an instant the room turned into a world of ice and snow. The sudden extreme cold caused the windows to freeze instantly. Dressed in white with a face like ice and snow, she was like a fairy from the 9 heavens. She was as bright as the moon in the sky, as cold as ice and snow, as cold as an iceberg that would never melt. Her eyes also suddenly became cold and sharp. This was the spiritual goddess that the people of the 9 heavens pavilion were familiar with, Swordsmanship. The window opened gently and Swordsmanship floated out like a white cloud. She turned in the air and soared into the clouds. Wherever she passed, a piece of ice slowly spread. Chapter 780. On the campus of Hidden Dragon High School. When Xingtian's face was pale and his body was thin, only his eyes were filled with an inexplicable brilliance and pride. My students, 42 talented youths, are about to go to the ruins. My brother has done such an earth-shattering thing for the sake of our brotherhood. This is my pride. They are all worthy of my pride for the rest of my life. In the later half of my life, I will have material to brag about. Therefore I can't lose face for my brother. If there is a time when Xingtian am needed, I will not hesitate to offer my loyal heart and pure blood. In this life, I have no more regrets and will never betray this kindness. In this life, I will never tarnish this glory of my brother. Everyone in our class is here. Everyone is here. Follow me. When Xingtian took the lead and walked, even though he had not recovered from his serious injuries, his body was still as straight as a sword. The group of people came to the sports field. There were already a few selected students waiting here. They went to the infant transformation group. The total number of people was close to 300. After a while the scheduled people all arrived. There were 3 teams. Led by Zhang Xiaofei, 8 teachers were protecting them. When Xingtian and the others were injured, so they did not have the chance to participate in this escort. Thank you for your guidance, teacher. Under the leadership of Zuoxiao Duo, the 42 students of Class 1 bowed at the same time. When Xingtian stood upright and accepted the bow. Safety is the most important thing in all things. I will wait for you to return safely. When Xingtian's voice was slightly hoarse, if you encounter that kind of choice between opportunity and life, remember, choose life first. Yes, teacher. Go. Let's go. The other classes also bid farewell to their teachers. With a single command, the 300 students of the Hidden Dragon High School all soared into the sky, transforming into a gust of morning wind as they flew into the sky. Starlight Mountains. This time it was completely different from before. It was as if its appearance had changed completely. The surrounding mountains had all disappeared at this moment, and there was only flat land as far as the eye could see. It was like a huge plain. Only under the golden door in the sky, there was a big lake with rippling blue waves. It was created by the Flood Witch's hammer that day. At this moment the scenery was actually very beautiful. Looking at it made one feel relaxed and happy. As the agreed date approached, the various experts arrived one after another. Those who arrived earlier had already settled into the tents that had already been set up. The military experts were the first to arrive. At this moment, the voices of high-ranking military officials could be heard from almost every direction. The Guaxian experts were already prepared and lined up neatly to receive instructions. The Royal God Realm Masters were almost done as well. There were not enough cloud transformation teams, and more were still coming. The 4 great commanders had already returned to their respective territories. But here there were still many higher-ups. The left and right heavenly kings, Emperor Zhaixing, and the others were all on the mountain peak, guarding against unexpected changes and responding to unexpected needs. 3 of the 7 swords of the Tao League were also present. 3 of the 11 great shamans also stayed. The Flood Witch, Jinlin Great Shaman, and the Wind Emperor Great Shaman. The others were all driven back by the Flood Witch. By right, the Great Flood Witch himself could have completely ignored the matters here. But for some unknown reason, he stayed behind. But he also stayed to care about the matters. Everything was negotiated and handled by Jinlin and the Wind Emperor. The sky had just brightened when a biting cold wind suddenly blew from the horizon. It almost made people think that the ice underworld great shaman had returned. In the direction of Fenghai City, a slim white figure was flying in the air. With her arrival, it seemed that the morning sun on the horizon had lost its color. Boundless cold air suddenly enveloped the entire gathering place. It wasn't until she landed and retracted her aura that the extremely cold air stopped spreading. However, when everyone saw her face and figure, they still felt that she was extremely cold, pure, and unsullied. Their eyes were filled with the feeling that it was too cold to stand at the top. It was Wuxia who had arrived. Her appearance, which she thought was very normal, stunned everyone. Countless people were looking at her and gasping in amazement. Over at the Nine Heavens Pavilion's side, someone had already waved and greeted Lord Spiritual Cat. Among the Cloud Transformation Realm cultivators from the Nine Heavens Pavilion, Wuxia was fully deserving of the title of Big Sister. Everyone stood up respectfully to welcome the arrival of their big sister. Wuxia saw them before that person spoke. Her body floated and turned in the air, landing in the middle of the crowd. Then her figure disappeared. Many young cultivators nearby could not help but have their eyes lit up. Although it was only a glimpse, it was already engraved in their hearts and souls. It was hard to forget. Who is this? So beautiful. Really too beautiful. I feel like I'm in love. Sigh. I don't think there's a chance. Too cold. It's lonely at the top, do you know? What do you know? It's only interesting like this. Only then will there be a sense of conquest. Shda. Those who had the qualifications to come here were all geniuses from different places. Seeing such an outstanding beauty, there were countless people whose hearts were moved. They all began to inquire about her background. The experts of the Nine Heavens Pavilion looked at these whispering people with pity and disdain in their hearts. Just you bunch of idiots. Wait to be frozen. If this Lord Spiritual Cat was so easy to get in touch with, would you guys even have a chance? Wouldn't our Nine Heavens Pavilion be the most elite group of people in the entire Yanwu Empire? We can tell you very responsibly that we have never seen this spiritual thought, heavenly lady smile in such a long time. As for those who had returned to Mystic Realm, or rather, those who had some years of experience in the martial world, they all closed their eyes and sat calmly. They did not think, look, or inquire. It was as if they did not care about the arrival of such a beauty like the Wuxia. However, they all remembered her. To be able to come this far, these people already knew very well that if such a woman had a home, it would definitely be a ruthless character that they could not afford to offend. If she did not have a home, then those who had their eyes on this woman would definitely be those future ruthless characters. In other words, the fact that this woman could maintain such a temperament and aura could only mean one thing. This woman's background was shockingly huge. She was definitely not someone that anyone could afford to offend. The experienced martial artists all understood that this was an earth-shattering whirlpool. Whoever rashly touched it would be smashed into smithereens without any chance of survival. Therefore, they would not have such thoughts. For this kind of woman who was so beautiful that she could easily implicate the entire family, they did not dare to think about or touch her. Only those martial arts schools, departments, or those Cloud Royal God experts who had reached the required level of cultivation but had yet to reach the required level of experience were flushed with excitement. They were all thinking of ways to inquire about her. In addition to calculating their own wealth, fantasizing about a beautiful future with this beauty, and walking to the pinnacle of life. The experienced martial artists all looked down at their noses. A bunch of idiots who had not been beaten up by society. They really thought that they were the main characters. She could not be bothered with them. She would just go and smash her head into a bloody mess. Beautiful women were always resources, and they had to be of high quality. Once a woman's beauty reached a certain level, not only would she be a high-quality resource, she could also be a disaster. If one was not careful, there might be someone who would bring disaster to himself just because he took an extra look at her. There would be no room for him to turn over. And the beauty of this young lady who flew over from the sky was even above the description. As for the whirlpool that she could cause, they could imagine it themselves. The experienced martial artists even dared to say that among the people present today, if any one of them really moved this fairy's heart, then this lucky guy would probably disappear from the face of the earth before the next day. This point, the experienced martial artists could guarantee with their own lives and their descendants that it was absolutely true. The experienced martial artists only remembered Zhuxiaonian for one purpose. If this woman was in trouble or something, they would help her. They did not dare to think about winning her heart. Their biggest wish was to leave a favor with her. Once such a woman's favor was returned, it might be the biggest opportunity in their lives. This was what the experienced martial artists wanted. The difference between a rash youth and an experienced martial artist was like heaven and earth. This was the real reason why out of 10,000 rash youths, perhaps only 3 to 5 could live to become experienced martial artists. A big lake separated the three sides. The players of the 4 echelons of the Umno Alliance Dao League also entered the arena one after another. At this time, the participants of Yunduan High Martial Arts and Ancestral Dragon High Martial Arts had also arrived, including Zhou Yunqing, Long Yuxing, Wanli Xiao, and the others were all stretching their necks to look for Zhou Xiaoduo and Li Chenglong. When they found out that the Hidden Dragon High Martial Arts had not arrived, their faces were full of disappointment. Finally, the wind and clouds surged. The team of the Hidden Dragon High Martial Arts had also finally arrived. Zhou Xiaoduo and Li Chenglong blended in with them, not showing off their abilities. The team of the Hidden Dragon High Martial Arts had a total of 400 people. In these few days, Li Chenglong had already come up with a relatively complete secret code communication system. For example, the call for help in a critical moment, or the trace of being chased, how to leave a mark on a rock, how to leave a mark on a tree, how to leave a mark on the ground. On this basis, how to distinguish between one's own people and outsiders. In short, all kinds of contact methods were clearly defined. This is only the contact method of the Hidden Dragon High Martial Arts. I believe that the other schools will certainly have their own secret codes. Don't worry about it. When we need help, we can look for them or they can come to us. But we must remember our own secret codes, and we can't forget them. If my estimation is not wrong, after entering the ruins, it will be difficult to maintain an organization. There is a high chance that everyone will be randomly scattered and fight for themselves. With the secret codes, you can relatively quickly find your own team and regroup. If you can't find your own team for the time being, the nearest team, as long as it is a team from the Astral Souls continent, should immediately join it. When you have the opportunity to find your own team, you can regroup. When you are alone, you must be extra careful. When facing more than 2 enemies, even if there is a great opportunity in front of you, as long as you don't have absolute confidence, try not to take risks as much as possible. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.